Chapter 1570. The heavenly punishment suddenly appeared in the northern underworld immortal realm, and its target seemed to be the immortal crystal spirit vein, where Shao Chun was. It had been almost half a year since Shao Chun entered the immortal crystal spirit vein. At this time, many heaven's prides in the northern underworld immortal realm had already collected all kinds of heaven and earth treasures in the northern underworld immortal realm, and then began to cultivate. Although Shao Chun was the only one who obtained the immortal crystal spirit vein, the spiritual energy in the northern underworld immortal realm was so rich that it was indeed a good place for others to cultivate. It had been almost half a year of cultivation, and during this period, Shao Chun didn't make any movements. However, the heavenly punishment suddenly appeared in the sky today, and that kind of power made everyone present feel chilled down their spines. Shao Chun broke through. Soon, someone guessed that this heavenly punishment was probably related to Shao Chun. After all, no one present had broken through a major realm, so there shouldn't be any heavenly punishment. Moreover, looking at how terrifying this heavenly punishment was, it obviously couldn't be the heavenly punishment of the great sage realm. It was estimated that such a heavenly punishment would only appear after breaking through to the immortal realm. Shao Chun had broken through to the immortal realm. Realizing this, everyone was both surprised and delighted. They were delighted that Shao Chun had indeed succeeded, and they were shocked that he had broken through to the immortal realm in just half a year. Was this immortal crystal spirit vein really so powerful? It could allow a person to break through to the immortal realm from the perfection of the quasi-sage realm in half a year. This was indeed something that no one dared to think about. Everyone was shocked, but at this time, the heavenly punishment in the sky, which was originally terrifying, actually closed slowly without any warning. It dissipated. The heavenly punishment hasn't descended, and it dissipated. Looking at the slowly dissipating black hole, everyone couldn't understand what it meant. The heavenly punishment hasn't descended yet, so how could it dissipate? Naturally, everyone didn't know the secret of the force of living beings. Shao Chun had absorbed the force of living beings, reformed the ancestral spirit, condensed the heavenly immortal mansion, and stepped into the immortal realm. In this way, what could this heavenly punishment do to Shao Chun? The saints were equal to the heavens and earth, so why would the heavens and earth send down heavenly punishment when the saints broke through? Shao Chun now had the power of all living beings, so the heavenly punishment couldn't do anything to him. Therefore, after the heavenly punishment appeared, it disappeared without a trace. This wasn't strange at all. The divine punishment vanished, and Shao Chun, who was seated in the universal force, sensed it as well. The breakthrough had ended, and Shao Chun had absorbed and refined all the universal force in the surroundings. His mind was still replaying everything he had seen. The world treated all living beings like dogs, and all living beings rose up to wage war against the world. Heaven and earth viewed all living beings as a source of power. At the same time, they did not wish for all living beings to be united. Heaven and earth had made up legends about different races, saying that every race was an enemy. This was all for the sake of causing the saints to fight amongst themselves. Heaven and earth were like outsiders, sitting high up on the fishing platform. In truth, there was no such thing as race. When heaven and earth first formed, all living beings accompanied each other. At that time, all living beings were equal, and there was no such thing as race. For a moment, Shao Chun didn't know how to face everything he had experienced in the past 6 months. After refining the universal force, Shao Chun could clearly sense that all living beings hated the injustice of the heavenly Tao, as well as their enmity towards heaven and earth. After absorbing the universal force, Shao Chun became the hope of all living beings, the hope to break the rule of the heavenly Tao. Why was the heavenly Tao able to suppress all living beings? Why did the heavenly Tao put so many shackles on all living beings? Otherwise, how could all living beings truly grow? Shao Chun found it difficult to make up his mind. Was the heavenly Tao really the enemy of all living beings? If that was the case, then wouldn't the Hachibara Sankai be the friend of all living beings? Wouldn't it be an organization created by all living beings in order to resist the will of the heavenly way? All of this caused Xiao Chen's worldview to collapse. The symbol of the past was actually the enemy of all living beings, and the enemy of the past was actually representing and fighting for all living beings. Everything had been completely reversed. However, it would probably take some time for Xiao Chen to fully accept all of this. The heavenly Tao was really unfair. As warriors, we have to carry on the wishes of our ancestors and fight against the heavenly Tao to the end. We have to fight for ourselves. The angry roars of all living beings seemed to reverberate in his mind. After sighing helplessly, Xiao Chen slowly opened his eyes and looked around. The rich white light around him had completely dissipated, and the pure and gentle universal force had been completely absorbed by Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen looked inside his body and saw that his dantian had been occupied by the golden heavenly abode, which was emitting a soft, faint golden light. The heavenly abode was floating in Xiao Chen's abdomen, and wisps of extremely pure spiritual power were being devoured and refined by the heavenly abode. After breaking through, Xiao Chen wasn't as excited or happy as he had imagined. Instead, he was a little confused. After breaking through to the immortal state, Xiao Chen's strength was much stronger than before. To put it bluntly, it wouldn't be difficult for Xiao Chen to kill even the great sage like Yin Yangzi. However, even though he suddenly possessed such terrifying power, Xiao Chen wasn't happy at all. This was because Xiao Chen didn't know where he should go. The matter of the heavenly Tao and all living beings made Xiao Chen confused. He was a member of all living beings. Was he going to become an enemy of the will of the heavenly way? Or was he going to forget this matter and treat it as if it had never happened? However, was this possible? Since he already knew the truth of the matter, no matter how much Xiao Chen wanted to forget, the truth was always in front of him. Xiao Chen really couldn't forget it. Xiao Chen's current feeling was as if one day, someone suddenly told him that the mother who loved him and raised him wasn't his biological mother. Instead, she was the enemy who killed his parents. His biological parents were killed by her. That was how he felt. What should he choose? After pondering for a long time, Xiao Chen couldn't find an answer at all. However, at this moment, because the power of living beings had been completely absorbed by Xiao Chen, the space began to collapse. At this time, Xiao Chen was forcefully teleported out by a mysterious force. Xiao Chen's vision turned dark, and he returned to the northern underworld immortal realm. At this time, the space where the power of living beings was located had completely collapsed, and the entrance was gone. Seeing Xiao Chen suddenly appear, Qin Shiru and the other 3 women who had been guarding here naturally ran over immediately. They hadn't seen him for half a year, and his temperament had become more and more otherworldly. In particular, his eyes seemed to be able to make people fall in love with him. The 4 women all felt that in this short half a year, Xiao Chen seemed to have changed a lot. The change was indeed too great. Please collect, please vote, please recommend me. Chapter 1571. After breaking through to the immortal realm, everyone could feel an indescribable aura from Xiao Chen's body. It was as if it was the same as the heavens and the earth. In fact, this wasn't an illusion. Because Xiao Chen had absorbed the power of living beings, everyone naturally felt a sense of reverence when facing Xiao Chen. This wasn't strange. With Qin Shiru and the other 3 women in his arms, Xiao Chen forced a smile. To be honest, Xiao Chen's heart was still in a mess. He didn't know what choice he should make in the future. After struggling for a while, Xiao Chen still didn't tell everyone about this matter. He didn't even tell Qin Shiru and the other 3 women. After all, the heavens and the earth enslaved all living beings, and all living beings wanted to rebel against the heavens and the earth. Such a thing was indeed a bit too shocking. With a forced smile, Xiao Chen nodded and greeted everyone one after another. But at this moment, the figure of the will of the heavenly way suddenly appeared in the sky. With the arrival of the will of the heavenly way, everyone present immediately cupped their hands and bowed. Their attitude was absolutely respectful to the extreme. On the other hand, Shao Chun might have bowed without hesitation before. But now, perhaps because he had absorbed the power of living beings, Shao Chun wasn't willing to bow down to the will of the heavenly way. Therefore, among the crowd, only Shao Chun stood proudly. His eyes met with the will of the heavenly way. Facing Shao Chun's gaze, the will of the heavenly way's face didn't change at all. However, a faint chill flashed in the depths of his eyes. Shao Chun condensed the heavenly immortal mansion and broke through to the immortal realm. In this way, he must have known everything. This wasn't difficult to see from Shao Chun's eyes. The will of the heavenly way took a deep look at Shao Chun, then said softly, "All right, this matter is over. You should go back." The matter of the northern underworld immortal realm had come to an end. The so-called immortal crystal spirit vein and the power of living had been completely absorbed by Shao Chun. As soon as he finished speaking, the will of the heavenly way waved his hand slightly. Then, everyone felt an inexplicable force enveloping them, and they were all sent out of the northern underworld celestial realm. Shao Chun didn't know what the will of the heavenly way meant to him, but he didn't think too much about it. He followed Wine Taoist and the others back to the seventh mainland. Along the way, Shao Chun seemed to be in a daze. However, he didn't know where the will of the heavenly way had gone. After sending everyone out of the northern underworld celestial realm, the will of the heavenly way left directly. On the way back to the seventh mainland, Wine Taoist accompanied Shao Chun and took a big gulp of wine. He looked at Shao Chun and said with a smile, "Hey, you little brat. Well done, kid. You really gave me face this time. You defeated Yu Shu Jin, the heir of the seventh world. Not bad, not bad. Now you're the first holy son of the seventh wilderness." Ha! Wine Taoist was very satisfied with Shao Chun's performance in the northern underworld celestial realm. Moreover, Shao Chun was now in the immortal realm. In terms of battle power, he wasn't much different from him. Of course, Wine Taoist's cultivation was higher than Shao Chun's. There was the immortal Grandmaster realm above the immortal realm, and Wine Taoist was in the immortal Grandmaster realm. Wine Taoist said with a smile. However, Shao Chun seemed to have a lot on his mind. Wine Taoist asked curiously, "What's wrong with you? Is there something on your mind? Tell me. Let me enlighten you." Shao Chun clearly had something on his mind. Hearing that, Shao Chun turned to look at Wine Taoist. They looked at each other without saying a word. Wine Taoist was a little numb from Shao Chun's stare. Shao Chun then said flatly, "Old man, let me ask you something. If the heavenly way is unfair one day, what will you do?" "The heavenly way is unfair?" Shao Chun's words were very strange, but Taoist Wine was taken aback. He then yelled at Shao Chun without any hesitation. "What the hell? You little brat, are you crazy? How can the heavenly way be unfair? Without the heavenly way, there wouldn't be this world. Where we live then? Don't let your imagination run wild." Wine Taoist's worship of the heavenly way was absolutely unquestionable. He was an exception. In other words, in the seventh world, no matter what race or cultivation level, everyone held a heart of reverence for the heavenly way. It was like a sentence that the heavenly way once said, "Heaven is the father, earth is the mother." Reverence for the heavenly way. This was something that was engraved in the depths of people's souls. No one could change it. Everyone revered the heavenly way and treated the heavenly way as their parents. After hearing Wine Taoist's words, Shao Chun smiled and a trace of disappointment flashed in his eyes. He was right. Even though he knew a lot of secrets, no one would believe him if he told them. On the contrary, many people would jump out and accuse him of being disrespectful to the heavenly way and that he was a sinner. It was useless to know the truth because the four of them wouldn't believe it. In that case, what should Shao Chun do? Should he pretend that he didn't know and forget about this matter? Or he felt more and more depressed. Just like that, the group returned to the seventh continent's heavenly Yin-Yang sect. After returning to the Taiyang sect, Wine Taoist and Shao Chun had a drink that night and left early the next morning. It was said that the heavenly way had ordered Wine Taoist and the other immortals to return to the front lines and not stay on the seventh continent any longer. After Wine Taoist left, The news that Xiao Chun had become the holy son of the seventh continent spread like wildfire. In an instant, Xiao Chun became the idol in the hearts of countless young people. Things seemed to be developing in a good direction, but Xiao Chun still couldn't feel happy. Xiao Chun simply couldn't ignore the secrets in his heart, let alone forget them. After Wine Daoist left, Longqing and Xin Yuanling returned to the Dragon Tribe, and Xin Yuanling to the Xin Yuan clan. In the cave abode, Xiao Chun, Qin Shu, Qing Luo, Zhang Jingxiang, Xiao Qing, and the rest of the family sat around the pavilion and ate. Seeing that Xiao Chun had been depressed for the past few days, Qin Shu couldn't help but ask, "Husband, is there something on your mind? You seem a little out of it these few days." As the closest people to Xiao Chun, Qin Shu and the other women naturally noticed that Xiao Chun was acting strangely. However, Xiao Chun didn't say anything. He drank the wine in his cup and shook his head. "It's nothing. Maybe it's because I broke through to the immortal realm too quickly, so I'm not used to it yet." Xiao Chun still didn't tell the women what was on his mind. It wasn't that he wanted to hide it from them, but that he didn't know how to tell them about it. Please add it to your collection. Please recommend it. Chapter 1572. He didn't know what to say to the girls. Of course, even Xiao Chun himself was at a loss. He didn't know what to do. When they heard this, Qin Shu and the other two women, as well as Xiao Qing and Bai Ruyue, knew that Xiao Chun had something on his mind. But if he didn't say anything, there was nothing they could do. He had been like this ever since he returned from the northern underworld immortal realm. Even when the outside world spread that Xiao Chun was now the first holy son of the seventh wilderness, Xiao Chun didn't seem to feel anything special. He was still deep in thought, as if he was making an important decision. Knowing that everyone was worried about him, Xiao Chun forced a smile and said, "I'm fine. It's just that I've been under a lot of pressure recently. After breaking through to the immortal realm, it won't be long before I have to rush to the front line to fight against the Hachibara Senkai." He didn't want everyone to be too worried about him. But who knew that as soon as he finished speaking, a young man in gray suddenly appeared in the courtyard. The young man in gray was none other than the will of the heavenly way of the seventh wilderness. The will of the heavenly way appeared in front of everyone without any warning. Now, for a large number of people, the will of the heavenly way was no longer a secret. Because of the successful construction of the gate of the immortal realm during this period of time, people like Yin Yangzi, the great sage, and Xiao Chun, the chosen of the saint ranking, had more or less come into contact with the will of the heavenly way. At the very least, they had seen the will of the heavenly way from afar. So this time, when the will of the heavenly way appeared, everyone was only slightly stunned. Then, Qin Shu and the other three women all stood up and bowed respectfully. Unlike the others, Xiao Chun didn't move at this time. His eyes were fixed on the will of the heavenly way. If it was before, Xiao Chun definitely wouldn't think too much about it when the will of the heavenly way came in the middle of the night. But now, Xiao Chun, who knew a lot of secrets, didn't know why he was instinctively on guard against the will of the heavenly way. Xiao Chun didn't bow. Seeing this, Qin Shu gently pulled the corner of Xiao Chun's clothes and said, "Husband, that's the will of the heavenly way. What's wrong with you?" Qin Shu secretly said anxiously when he saw that the will of the heavenly way didn't bow. But at this time, the will of the heavenly way smiled and said, "It's okay. I'm here today to have a good chat with Xiao Chun." Upon hearing the will of the heavenly way's words, Qin Shu and the others secretly heaved sighs of relief. On the other hand, Xiao Chun's brows knitted even tighter. It's so late and the will of the heavenly way is here. It's too unusual. Besides, Xiao Chun didn't know if it was his intuition or not, but he felt a sense of danger from the will of the heavenly way. There was no reason for it, but it was just a feeling. Could it be that the will of the heavenly way wants to kill me? At this thought, Xiao Chun felt cold sweat trickling down his back. If that's the case, then, just because I know these secrets, the will of the heavenly way wants to kill me? Suddenly realizing this, Xiao Chun felt a little regretful. If that's the case, I've been too careless. But is that really the case? Just because I know these secrets, The will of the heavenly way wants to kill me? The will of the heavenly way didn't speak, but Xiao Chen's mind was in a mess. At this moment, the will of the heavenly way said something that stunned Xiao Chen. Xiao Chen, you should know from the power of living beings, right? The power of living beings? Upon hearing this, Xiao Chen was taken aback. It was apparent that the will of the heavenly way was here for this. Upon hearing this, Xiao Chen nodded slightly. Yes, Xiao Chen didn't know how to answer or what to say. At the same time, he also didn't know the will of the heavenly way's intentions. That was why he simply nodded slightly. On the other hand, Qin Shi's group of four, Xiao Qing and Bai Ruyue, were baffled as they listened to the conversation between Xiao Chen and the will of the heavenly way. They had no idea what the will of the heavenly way and Xiao Chen were talking about. At the same time, after hearing Xiao Chen's answer, the will of the heavenly way smiled faintly and said, "So you know. You already know? In that case, if I were to tell you that all of this is real, what would you think?" The will of the heavenly way chuckled. That smile was still as refreshing as a spring breeze. But at this moment, Xiao Chen had an extremely bad feeling in his heart. If it was only a guess before, after hearing these two sentences from a will of the heavenly way, Xiao Chen was almost certain that the will of the heavenly way was here to get rid of him today. Because he knew those secrets, the will of the heavenly way wanted to kill him and prevent those secrets from being exposed to the world. What he had been worried about had finally happened. After he found out about those secrets, Xiao Chen had been worried that the will of the heavenly way would eliminate him. That was why for the past few days, Xiao Chen hadn't mentioned a single word about the power of living beings to the people around him. If he didn't know these secrets, then the will of the heavenly way would have a reason to let them go. That was what Xiao Chen thought. As for running away, Xiao Chen had never thought about it. Even though he was now in the immortal state, where could he run to? Moreover, his opponent was the will of the heavenly way. As long as Xiao Chen was still in the seventh wilderness, the will of the heavenly way could easily sense him no matter where he was. Therefore, Xiao Chen had never thought of running away because it was simply unrealistic. Since he already had an answer in his heart, Xiao Chen forced himself to calm down and said to the will of the heavenly way with a serious expression, "They don't know anything. Let them rest first." The they that Xiao Chen was referring to were naturally Qin Shi and the other girls, as well as Xiao Qing, Bai Ruyue, Qing Yao, and Qing Luo. They didn't know anything, so the will of the heavenly way had no reason to kill them. Let them go. That was what Xiao Chen wanted to express. He only thought about the safety of Qin Shi and the other girls. As for himself, Xiao Chen had no other choice now. Even if he was in the immortal state, so what? Xiao Chen was still far from being a match for the will of the heavenly way, especially in the seventh wilderness, which was the home of the will of the heavenly way. Xiao Chen's meaning was very clear. If there was anything, just come at him. He only hoped that the will of the heavenly way would let Xiao Chen go. However, no one expected that after hearing this, the will of the heavenly way smiled slightly and said, "It's okay. If you don't know, then just know. It's a good opportunity for everyone to share their opinions." As he said that, the will of the heavenly way pointed in the air. Then, several rays of light entered the glabella of the girls present. Immediately, the girls' eyes lost focus. The will of the heavenly way naturally didn't do this to kill them. Instead, he used some kind of secret technique to directly instill a video into everyone. As for the content of the video, Xiao Chen had already guessed it. Gritting his teeth, Xiao Chen looked at the will of the heavenly way with a cold expression and shouted, "Why?" Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1573. The will of the heavenly way directly instilled the information into Qin Shi and the other girls. Without a doubt, it was related to the power of all living beings so that the girls would know the truth of the world. Originally, the girls didn't know that the world enslaved all living beings. If that was the case, the will of the heavenly way would have a reason not to kill them. But now that the girls knew the truth, it was a completely different matter. Would the will of the heavenly way let them go? To put it bluntly, the will of the heavenly way had no intention of letting Xiao Qian and his family go. Xiao Qian's eyes were filled with intense, killing intent. He finally saw through the will of the heavenly way's thoughts. But in the face of Xiao Qian's angry glare, the will of the heavenly way didn't seem to mind at all and smiled. Xiao Qian, you haven't answered my question yet. Since you already know everything, what do you think? I think you're a mother of asterisker. Faced with the will of the heavenly way's question, Xiao Qian roared angrily and immediately rushed towards the will of the heavenly way. At the same time, his immortal-level aura soared into the sky. Unfortunately, Xiao Qian's attack was directly broken by the will of the heavenly way as soon as he took a step forward. The will of the heavenly way gently pointed a finger and then gently tapped it. Suddenly, Xiao Qian felt an irresistible pressure fiercely pressing down on him. The will of the heavenly way looked at Xiao Qian with a gentle smile and said indifferently, "You're disrespecting the heavens. Kneel." As he said that, the will of the heavenly way gently pressed down with his finger. Then, Xiao Qian's knees went forward without any resistance, and he directly knelt in front of the will of the heavenly way. Xiao Qian didn't have any resistance. Even though he had broken through to the immortal realm and condensed the heavenly immortal manner, he still couldn't resist the will of the heavenly way. Xiao Qian still stared at the will of the heavenly way with murderous eyes and shouted angrily, "They don't know anything. Why? Why? If you want to kill them, just kill me alone is enough. They don't know anything. Why, originally, the will of the heavenly way didn't know anything. But why did the will of the heavenly way take the of the heavenly way's initiative to let them know the truth? Of the way's reason? Of the heavenly ways of the ways of the heavenly ways them know the truth? It was obvious that he also wanted to kill them. Facing Xiao Qian's angry shout, the will of the heavenly way said indifferently, "According to your words, if you don't remove the roots, the weeds will grow again when the spring breeze comes. So naturally, you can't leave any hidden dangers behind." How ruthless! Just because of such a small matter, the will of the heavenly way wanted to kill Xiao Qian and his family. Hearing this, Xiao Qian struggled with all his might, but it was useless. At this moment, Qin Shu and the other 3 girls, as well as his parents, were all receiving the information transmitted to them by the will of the heavenly way. Judging from the changes in their expressions, they obviously experienced something unbelievable, just like Xiao Qian when he just learned the truth. Damn it, the will of the heavenly Tao said with a smile. Damn it, heaven and earth were born together with the ability of all living beings. But later on, heaven and earth enslaved all living beings. Heaven and earth were heartless and deceived all living beings, making the saints believe in heaven and earth. Heaven and earth were unfair, and the saints were deceived. That must be what you're thinking right now, right? After hearing this, Xiao Qian continued to struggle, trying to break free from the will of the heavenly way's shackles. He had no intention of replying at all. Seeing this, the will of the heavenly way didn't mind and allowed Xiao Qian to struggle. At the same time, he continued with a smile. But is that really the case? There are no rules in the world. If all living beings were equal to heaven and earth, what do you think would happen to the world? It would be chaotic. It would be a complete mess. It would be so chaotic that heaven and earth would lose their colors, and the sun and moon would lose their light. Therefore, heaven and earth extracted the ancestral spirits of all living beings so that all living beings could live a better life. They became mortals. All of this is actually for the sake of allowing everyone to live a better life. However, there are some people who refuse to accept the will of the heavenly Tao and want to go against the heavens at all times. Tell me, are these people really doing this for the sake of the fairness they speak of? Overthrowing heaven's way. What about after that? They take over heaven's way and continue to govern the 8 barren lands. In that case, what's the difference between them and heaven's way? The will of the heavenly way spoke slowly. Hearing this, Xiao Qian shouted angrily, "Bullsh asterisk T. You keep saying that you're compassionate. Then why are you doing this? Why won't you let them go? Sacrificing yourself for the greater good. Xiao Chun, I used to think highly of you. It can even be said that your performance exceeded my expectations. I didn't expect you to even defeat the heir of the seventh realm. Not bad, but unfortunately, some things can't be turned back. You didn't, and neither did your family. If I let them go today and kill you instead, do you think they'll still believe in heaven and earth in the future? They won't. Since that's the case, why keep them alive? Hearing Xiao Chen's angry shout, the will of the heavenly way said indifferently. Today he had to kill Xiao Chun and his family. Hearing this, Xiao Chun used almost all of his strength, but he still couldn't break free from the will of the heavenly way's restraint. Just as Xiao Chun was struggling to break free, on the other side, Qin Shi and the other girls, as well as Xiao Qing and Bai Ruyue, came to their senses one by one. They regained their senses, but their expressions were the same. They were shocked, incomparably shocked. Involuntarily looking at Xiao Chun, Flower Fairy said softly, "Husband, this." She wanted to ask Xiao Chun if this was true, but at this moment, before Xiao Chun could say anything, the will of the heavenly way spoke first. There's no need to doubt. Everything is true. The will of the heavenly way took the initiative to admit. Hearing this, everyone's eyes fell on the will of the heavenly way. This time, the way they looked at the will of the heavenly way, or rather, the way they looked at the will of the heavenly way, had completely changed. Confusion, doubt, and entanglement. These were the feelings everyone had at this moment. It could be said that they were exactly the same as Xiao Chen's. Moreover, Qin Shi and the other girls were originally talented and intelligent people. They quickly guessed the purpose of the will of the heavenly way. Tianyu laughed self-deprecatingly. Husband obtained the power of all living beings and saw through the lies of heaven and earth. And you, as the will of the heavenly way, want to get rid of husband, and at the same time, don't you intend to let us go? So before you die, you told us the truth, right? Hearing Tianyu's words, the will of the heavenly way's expression didn't change. He still had a faint smile on his face as he said, "That's right. In order for all living beings to live a better life, your family can only be sacrificed." Sacrifice your mother? Come at me if you dare. Don't mess with my family. As soon as the will of the heavenly way finished speaking, Xiao Chun had already shouted angrily. Hearing Xiao Chen's angry shout, the will of the heavenly way smiled faintly. "You're that angry? Then, when I kill your family in front of you later, will you be able to take it? Please add this to your collection. Monthly vote. Recommend this." Chapter 1574. The will of the heavenly way said coldly. Upon hearing that, Xiao Chun struggled fiercely again, trying to break free from the will of the heavenly way shackles. Unfortunately, Xiao Chen's struggles were useless in the eyes of the will of the heavenly way. The will of the heavenly way looked at Qin Shi and the other women. A murderous intent flashed in the eyes of the will of the heavenly way, and his expression turned gloomy. You can only blame your bad luck for knowing something you shouldn't know. What's wrong with heaven and earth governing all living beings? Without heaven and earth, how can there be living beings? All living beings worship heaven and earth and believe in heaven and earth. This is the law of heaven and earth. But there are always some people who want to go against heaven and compete with heaven and earth. What a joke. The will of the heavenly way said coldly. To be honest, the will of the heavenly way hated the Hachibara Sunkai very much. In his opinion, heaven and earth governing all living beings was the law of heaven and earth, and it was a very normal thing. However, the will of the heavenly way had apparently forgotten one thing, and that was that the so-called heaven and earth rules were completely set by him. Therefore, no matter what, it was his idea, and the saints had no right to choose at all. As if to vent the dissatisfaction in his heart, the will of the heavenly way's expression turned a little sinister as soon as he finished speaking. But in response, Qin Shi said coldly, "Heaven is unfair. We naturally have to go against heaven and earth." After knowing the truth of the matter, Qin Shi and the other women's opinions of the will of the heavenly way had changed a lot. In addition, the will of the heavenly way was obviously trying to kill them, so the women naturally couldn't be nice to him anymore. Facing Qin Shiru's scolding, the murderous intent in the will of the heavenly way's eyes intensified. He sneered and said, "Fine, fine, fine. Go against heaven and earth. Since you want to die, don't blame me." With that, the will of the heavenly way pointed his finger. A ray of light flashed and went straight for Qin Shiru. Seeing this, Fei Mei rushed up without hesitation and blocked the ray of light for Qin Shiru. The finger light instantly pierced through Fei Mei's chest without any hesitation. Seeing this, Qin Shiru and the other ladies immediately caught Fei Mei's body. Looking at Fei Mei's pale face, even Qin Shiru's eyes were slightly red. Fei Mei was trying to protect Qin Shiru. Hearing this, Fei Mei forced a smile and said, "Madam, think of a way to escape. Think of a way." Fei Mei's heart meridian was directly shattered. They had no chance of winning against the will of the heavenly way. So Fei Mei's only hope was for Qin Shiru and the others to think of a way to escape. Before she finished speaking, Fei Mei was already dead. Seeing Fei Mei fall, Qin Shiru and the other women burst into tears. Xiao Chen struggled with all her might. At the same time, her eyes were bloodshot. Holding Fei Mei's body, Qin Shiru looked at the will of the heavenly way again. Then, he exchanged glances with Tian Yu, Flower Fairy, and Guling Yao. Then, the four women attacked the will of the heavenly way at the same time. If they had to think of a way to survive, escaping was definitely out of the question. Now that they had escaped from under the nose of the will of the heavenly way, it was almost impossible. Since there was no way to escape, they could only think of a way to attract others. Qin Shiru and the other women's idea was very simple. It was enough to attract the experts of the heavenly Yin and Taiyang sects and use the aftermath of the battle to attract the attention of others. When the time came, could the will of the heavenly way kill Xiao Chen's family in front of everyone? The will of the heavenly way needed the worship of all living beings, so it was impossible for him to kill Xiao Chen's family in front of everyone for no reason. Seeing Qin Shiru and the other women advancing instead of retreating, the will of the heavenly way smiled. He had already guessed what the women were thinking, but they were too naive. The will of the heavenly way smiled faintly. "You want to lure others here? You're thinking too much. Before I appeared, this cave had been completely sealed. No one in the outside world will know what happened here, so you'd better give up." Naturally, the will of the heavenly way couldn't reveal his true identity in front of everyone, so he was already prepared. Hearing this, Qin Shiru and the other women rushed towards the will of the heavenly way. At the side, Xiao Chun, who was bound by the will of the heavenly way, shouted angrily, "Don't do anything stupid. Hurry up and leave. Leave now." Even Xiao Chun wasn't a match for the will of the heavenly way, so it was no different from suicide for the four women to take the initiative to besiege the will of the heavenly way. Xiao Chun shouted anxiously. However, his angry shout couldn't change anything. The will of the heavenly way stretched out his hands slowly, and 4 5-colored radiances surrounded the four women. Then, the 4 5-colored radiances grabbed the four women's bodies like 4 big hands. Then, a huge force rushed towards the 5-colored radiances, and the 4 women's bodies were crushed. For clouds of blood mist exploded in midair, and the 4 women's figures disappeared. Drops of blood fell on Xiao Chen's body and face as if it were raining blood. Looking at this scene, Xiao Chen was instantly stunned. Dead, the 4 women were killed by the will of the heavenly way right in front of him. In an instant, Xiao Chen seemed to have lost his soul. Before he could even say a word, the 4 women had been crushed by the will of the heavenly way. His eyes were filled with disbelief. He couldn't believe everything that had happened before his eyes. He stood rooted to the ground. At the same time, after the will of the heavenly way killed Qin Shiru's 4 women, he first glanced at Xiao Chun. Seeing that Xiao Chun was completely stunned, the will of the heavenly way sneered. Is your state of mind destroyed? Huh, that's right. Now that Qin Shiru's 4 women were dead, Xiao Qin's state of mind was destroyed, and he had no interest in continuing to play. The will of the heavenly way turned to Xiao Qing by Ryue, Qing Yao, and Qing Luo, and said expressionlessly, "You must be tired after playing for so long. Time to send you on your way." With that, the will of the heavenly way prepared to attack again. Xiao Qing and Bai Ryue weren't frightened at all. They clenched their fists, and Bai Ryue looked at Xiao Qian with a gentle gaze. They couldn't resist the will of the heavenly way at all. Bai Ryue's gaze was fixed on Xiao Qian, and at the same time, the 5-colored radiance of the will of the heavenly way also enveloped Xiao Qing, Bai Ryue, and the others. Seeing that everyone was about to be killed like Qin Shi and the other 3 women, Xiao Qian, who was originally in a daze, suddenly let out a loud cry. However, there was no anger in this loud cry. Instead, it was full of pleading, a strong sense of pleading. Don't. I beg you don't. I'll agree to any of your conditions. Don't kill them. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 1575. Qin Shu, Fairy of 100 Flowers, Gu Lingyao, and Tian Yu. His 4 wives had died in front of him. This was a huge blow to Xiao Qian, and he could not describe it with words. At this moment, Xiao Qian felt as if his heart had been shattered. Tears flowed uncontrollably from his eyes. Who said that men don't cry easily? That's only because they haven't been heartbroken yet. Seeing his wife die in front of him like this, while he could only kneel in front of the enemy like a stray dog, unable to even move a finger. As a man, he could not even protect his own woman. This was simply the saddest thing in the world. He could clearly see the reluctance in the eyes of Qin Shiru and his 4 wives before they died. They were reluctant to part with Xiao Qian. They were reluctant to be separated from Xiao Qian. They were reluctant to be separated by life and death. Hatred, incomparable hatred. At this moment, the hatred in Xiao Qian's heart had reached a peak. However, in addition to hatred, Xiao Qian also felt a strong sense of powerlessness in his heart. This was a kind of powerlessness that could not produce any resistance. In the face of the will of the heavenly way, Xiao Qian, the first saint of the 7th wilderness, was simply a joke that even he found funny. It had to be said that Xiao Qian's path had been too smooth since he was young. From the Tianshan continent, from Lingshan County, from birth, Xiao Qian had always been crowned with the light of a genius. Countless people looked up to him and envied him. Although Xiao Qian had encountered many dangers on his path of cultivation, such as the Tiana continent, the North Star realm, the Central World, and so on. Moreover, many of these dangers had even endangered Xiao Qian's life. It could be said that his life was hanging by a thread. However, no matter which time it was, Xiao Qian had never been like this. There was only helplessness and despair in his heart. In the past, when he encountered setbacks and dangers, Xiao Qian had never felt powerless or desperate. This was because Xiao Qian believed that as long as he did not give up, there would always be a turning point. However, this time, in the face of the will of the heavenly way, Xiao Qian was in despair. In front of the will of the heavenly way, what was he? A grain of sand in the desert, or a drop of seawater in the ocean. He had no ability to resist. In front of the will of the heavenly way, all of Xiao Qian's efforts seemed to be short-lived and could not withstand a single blow. His wives died. Of course. But in the end, nothing had changed. His wives dead, and they had died in front of him. Of Xiao Qian, as their husband, what could he do? He could only crawl in front of the will of the heavenly way like a dog and watch him kill his wives one by one. Xiao Qian hated the will of the heavenly way, but he hated himself even more. He hated himself for being so weak. When faced with the will of the heavenly way, he did not even have the slightest ability to resist. Why? Why was he so weak? Helplessness and despair. At this moment, Xiao Qian's state of mind was completely shattered. Seeing that his parents were about to be killed after his 4 wives, Xiao Qian let go of everything. His dignity, his pride as the first holy son of the 7th wilderness, these were no longer important. For the first time in his life, Xiao Chan lowered his head that he had never been willing to lower. His spine, which had always been as straight as Jian, seemed to have been forcefully bent at this moment. Xiao Chun lowered his head in front of the will of the heavenly way with a face full of tears. He pressed his forehead deeply against the ground as if he was kneeling and worshipping a god. The flowing water blurred his vision as he spoke in a hoarse voice. I beg you, let my parents go. They don't know anything. Let them go, and I will agree to any of your conditions. Hearing this, Xiao Chun, who had always been arrogant since he was young, actually knelt in front of the will of the heavenly way like a stray dog, begging the will of the heavenly way to let him go. Xiao Qing and Bai Ruyue could not stop their tears from falling. Bai Ruyue was already in tears, while Xiao Qing clenched his teeth and said, Chen stand up. Looking at Xiao Chen's appearance, Xiao Qing only felt as if his heart was being squeezed tightly by something. An extreme feeling of grief surged in his heart. No one knew his son better than a father. As a father, Xiao Qing naturally knew how proud his son was. In terms of pride, Xiao Chun was no worse than anyone else. However, it was this arrogant Xiao Chun who was crawling at the feet of others like a dog today. This was something that Xiao Qing had never thought of and was absolutely unacceptable. However, in the face of Xiao Qing's angry shout, Xiao Chun was completely indifferent. Perhaps in Xiao Chen's heart, dignity and face were no longer important. Now, Xiao Chun only had one thought in his heart, and that was to let his parents be safe. Seeing that Xiao Chun didn't listen to his words at all, Xiao Qing shouted angrily, Stand up. My son is an arrogant genius, not a coward who kneels on the ground. Xiao Qing shouted angrily. At the same time, in the face of Xiao Chen's actions, the will of the heavenly way was slightly stunned. He naturally knew how difficult it was to make a genius like Xiao Chun bow his head. But now, Xiao Chun was really kneeling in front of him and took the initiative to lower his noble head. The will of the heavenly way didn't have the intention of mocking Xiao Chun. On the contrary, his feelings were somewhat complicated. However, he was only stunned for a moment before the will of the heavenly way attacked again. At the same time, he said softly, Some things are destined and can't be changed. So, your family must die. With that, the will of the heavenly way attacked Xiao Qing and Xiao Chun again. Seeing this, Xiao Chun lifted his head abruptly and shouted. No, Xiao Chun howled. Along with Xiao Chen's sorrowful cries, Xiao Qing, Bai Ruyue, Qing Yao, Si Ju, and Lan, and the other girls were all enveloped by the will of the heavenly way's attack. Then they were blasted to death before they could even scream. Not even their corpses were left behind. Dead. They're all dead. Xiao Chen's family is all dead. Looking at the spot where Xiao Qing and Bai Ruyue were standing just now, Xiao Chun couldn't make any sound. Even when the will of the heavenly way slowly approached him, Xiao Chun didn't react at all. Looking at Xiao Chun in front of him, the will of the heavenly way said indifferently, It's useless even if you don't die now. Xiao Chun, I'll be a good person and send your family off. With that, the will of the heavenly way didn't hesitate at all and struck out again, intending to kill Xiao Chun. I'm going to die. However, in the face of death, Xiao Chun didn't feel the slightest bit of fear. Qin Shu, his 4 daughters, and his parents were all dead. What was the point of living? Xiao Chun didn't care about the approaching death at all. However, just as the will of the heavenly way's attack was about to land on him, a figure suddenly appeared in front of Xiao Chun and blocked the attack for Xiao Chun. After escaping from death, the will of the heavenly way's eyes flashed with coldness when he saw this person appear. It's you again, author's note. There's something going on at home today, so I really don't have time to write. I only have 2 chapters left, so I can only update 2 chapters today. I have no choice. It's a very important matter. Brothers, please forgive me. In addition, there's a twist in the plot now. Brothers, you can make a bold guess. Who was the one who saved Xiao Chun? Chapter 1576. Xiao Chun barely escaped death, but he didn't react at all. He looked at the place where his parents were just now, with tears streaming down his face, completely ignoring the person who appeared beside him and saved him. Xiao Qian's state of mind had collapsed, and he was almost like a living corpse. At the same time, the will of the heavenly way stared coldly at the person who saved Xiao Qian. This person was none other than the realm lord of the Hachibara Senkai's seventh realm, Luo Li. In response to the cold voice of the will of the heavenly way, Luo Li said with an indifferent smile, "The seventh wilderness, TSK. You're still as vicious and merciless as ever. I'm impressed." "Luo Li, what exactly do you want?" The will of the heavenly way asked coldly while looking at Luo Li. The will of the heavenly way was actually extremely shocked by Luo Li's sudden appearance here. How did he break through the defensive line at the entrance of the seventh wilderness? How did he come to the seventh mainland? Although he was puzzled and shocked, now was obviously not the time to dwell on this, because Luo Li was already standing in front of him. His primary goal was to figure out his intentions. Looking at the ugly expression of the will of the heavenly way, Luo Li said with a smile, "Don't worry, the gate of the immortal domain has only opened a little, so only I can pass through. No one else from the seventh realm has come, and I'm here." With that, Luo Li turned to look at Xiao Qian, who was almost like a living corpse, and frowned slightly. His state of mind has collapsed. Luo Li naturally appeared here through the gate of the immortal domain. However, because the gate of the immortal domain was sealed by the will of the heavenly way, Luo Li could only tear open a small gap in a short period of time to let himself pass through, so no one from the seventh realm could pass through. Only Luo Li was here. As for the purpose of Luo Li's appearance here, it was obviously for Xiao Qian. Brother Xiao Qian defeated Yu Shu Jin and obtained the power of living beings. He had now ascended to the immortal realm and formed the heavenly immortal mansion. In Luo Li's opinion, Xiao Qian was undoubtedly the #1 candidate for the heir of the seventh realm. And to put it bluntly, when Luo Li had blocked the will of the heavenly way, Luo Li had already guessed what would happen to Xiao Qian's fate. As an old rival of the will of the heavenly way, Luo Li was sure that with the will of the heavenly way's character, since Xiao Qian knew the truth, he would definitely kill Xiao Qian. He would not let him go just because of Xiao Qian's talent. Therefore, from the beginning, Luo Li had already regarded Xiao Qian as the heir of the seventh realm. But now it seemed that he was one step too late. Xiao Qian's state of mind had already collapsed. This was not good news. If there was no way to heal him, then Xiao Qian would probably be a walking corpse in the future. How could such a person become the heir of the seventh realm? Seeing Luo Li frowning at Xiao Qian, the will of the heavenly way snorted coldly. "Luo Li, this person's state of mind has already collapsed. Do you think it's still useful?" His state of mind had collapsed. A walking corpse. Ignoring the will of the heavenly way's words, Luo Li frowned and stared at Xiao Qian. After a moment, a gleam flashed across his eyes. He reached out and grabbed at the air. Suddenly, some unknown things in the sky were caught by Luo Li. Seeing Luo Li's actions, a strange gleam flashed across the will of the heavenly way's eyes. Luo Li had actually collected the remnant souls of Qin Shu and the other girls, as well as Xiao Qing, Bai Ruyue, Qin Yao, and Qing Luo. Their souls had indeed been directly scattered by the will of the heavenly way, but there were still some remnant souls floating in the air. However, these remnant souls were actually useless and would disappear soon. After collecting them, Luo Li looked at Xiao Qian and said indifferently, "Xiao Qian, the feeling of not being able to protect the people around you must be terrible, right?" Hearing this, Xiao Qian didn't react at all. He didn't move at all. Seeing this, Luo Li didn't care. He slowly walked behind Xiao Qian and reached out to press Xiao Qian's head. Then, he moved his mouth close to Xiao Qian's ear and said faintly, "Someone once told me that all the tragedies in this world are due to one's lack of ability. You are very weak, so you can't protect your family. However, I could bring them back to life." Luo Li could bring Qin Shiru and the others back to life. Hearing this, the look in Xiao Qian's eyes finally changed. At the same time, the endless death aura on his body fluctuated violently. Sensing the change in Xiao Qian, a smile appeared on Luo Li's face. It seemed that he could still be saved. Resurrection. He could still be resurrected. After hearing Luo Li's words, Xiao Chen no longer cared about Luo Li's identity. He only wanted to bring Qin Shiru and the others back to life. He seemed to see hope again in his heart. At the same time, Luo Li forced Xiao Chen's head to face the will of the heavenly way. Luo Li said indifferently as he forced Xiao Chen to look at the will of the heavenly way. The heavenly way is unfair. That's why we have to go against it. Xiao Chen, do you hate him? Luo Li's words seemed to have a magical power. Moreover, when Xiao Chen looked directly at the will of the heavenly way, the hatred in his eyes burst out unreservedly. His eyes were blood red, and he constantly let out hoarse roars. This sound was like the roars of an injured beast, making people tremble involuntarily. How could he not hate him? He was the one who killed his entire family. Xiao Chen's hands began to struggle unconsciously, as if he wanted to rush up and fight the will of the heavenly way. However, under Luo Li's control, Xiao Chen had no way to break free. The deep and hoarse roars, accompanied by the intense hatred in his red eyes, made Xiao Chen look like an evil spirit that had crawled out of hell. Seeing Xiao Chen's appearance, the will of the heavenly way frowned slightly, while Luo Li smiled faintly. At the same time, Luo Li spoke again to Xiao Chen. Remember him. Remember his appearance. He was the one who killed your entire family. Weakness is the original sin. If you want revenge, you have to become stronger. Xiao Chen didn't reply after hearing Luo Li's words. Instead, he continued to roar hoarsely. At the same time, the hatred in his red eyes towards the will of the heavenly way was extremely intense. As soon as he finished speaking, Luo Li grabbed Xiao Chen, then glanced at the will of the heavenly way and disappeared on the spot. Luo Li took Xiao Chen away. Seeing this scene, the will of the heavenly way's eyes flashed coldly, but he didn't chase after them. With the gate of the immortal domain, the will of the heavenly way couldn't catch up to them. However, the will of the heavenly way had a bad feeling. Xiao Chen didn't die, which made the will of the heavenly way somewhat unwilling. Judging from Xiao Chen's performance just now, Xiao Chen would probably become the seventh Desolate's mortal enemy in the future. Most importantly, Xiao Chen had obtained the power of living beings. It wasn't good news for such a person to become the mortal enemy of the seventh Desolate. Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1577. Xiao Chen was taken away by Luo Li. Although the will of the heavenly way was not happy about this, there was nothing they could do. Xiao Chen's matter could not be made public. In this way, the will of the heavenly way could not fight against Luo Li because it would attract a lot of attention. Moreover, with Luo Li's strength, he was not afraid of the will of the heavenly way. Everyone thought that the world was the strongest. However, warriors at Luo Li's level could no longer be suppressed by the world. Luo Li took Xiao Chen all the way to the gate of the immortal area. Then, he forcibly tore the seal of the will of the heavenly way. The two of them directly entered the gate of the immortal area and disappeared. He took Xiao Chen directly to the Black Palace of the Seventh Realm. In the main hall, Luo Li casually threw Xiao Chen aside. Xiao Chen's eyes were fixed on Luo Li's right hand. There was a ball of light on Luo Li's right hand. This ball of light was the remnant souls of Qin Shiru and the others. Although they had lost their consciousness, they were Xiao Chen's only hope now. Luo Li had said that he had a way to revive the family members he had chosen. Sensing Xiao Chen's gaze, Luo Li glanced at him indifferently. Then, a middle-aged man strangely appeared in the main hall beside Xiao Chen. Looking directly at Xiao Chen, the middle-aged man frowned and said, "Realm Lord, is this the new heir of Kunlun you chose?" His state of mind has already collapsed. He's a useless person. At a glance, he could tell that Xiao Chen's state of mind had already collapsed. He was like a living dead. However, upon hearing this, Luo Li did not care at all and smiled slightly. "Take him to rest first. Take good care of him. I only have one way." With that, Luo Li looked at Xiao Chen again. A strange look flashed in his eyes. Seeing this, the middle-aged man did not say anything. He directly grabbed Xiao Chen and left the main hall. During the whole process, Xiao Chen did not say a word. His eyes were fixed on Luo Li's right hand. It was not until the middle-aged man was about to take him away that Xiao Chen suddenly struggled. Apparently, he was unwilling to leave the remnant souls of Qin Shu and the others. After being rescued by Luo Li, Xiao Chen was brought back to the seventh realm. In the seventh wasteland, the people of the Tianyin and Taiyang sects were completely unaware of what had happened yesterday. No one would have thought that Xiao Chen's family had been wiped out last night. Only Xiao Chen was rescued by Luo Li. No one noticed anything strange, but very soon, a piece of news that shocked everyone spread. Moreover, it came from the will of the heavenly Tao. Xiao Chen defected to the seventh realm and killed his father and wife. Last night, he killed 4 of his wives, his parents, and 6 of his personal maids. Finally, he fled the seventh wasteland with Luo Li, the realm lord of the Hachibara Senkai's seventh realm. This news came from the will of the heavenly way. Once it spread, everyone was stunned. How could this be possible? Brother, Xiao Chen defected? After the incident in the northern underworld immortal realm, Xiao Chen was now recognized as the first saint of the seventh palace. But no one expected that Xiao Chen would defect. Moreover, he killed his own wife and parents. This was simply the act of a beast. Everyone was shocked, but at the same time, some people couldn't believe it. They didn't believe that Xiao Chen would do such a thing. Dragon Clan. Lin Qing's first reaction after hearing this news was disbelief. In the hall, Long Qing looked at Long Yang and the Dragon Emperor in front of him and said firmly, "Impossible. Little brother would never do such a thing. I don't believe it." Long Qing had a very deep relationship with Xiao Chen. At the same time, he also knew what kind of person Xiao Chen was. With Xiao Chen's love for his 4 daughters and filial piety to his parents, how could Xiao Chen do such a thing? It was absolutely impossible. Long Qing wouldn't believe it, even if he was beaten to death. Hearing this, Long Yang nodded and said, "I also think it's impossible. Brother Xiao Chen is not such a person." Long Yang and Long Qing didn't believe that Xiao Chen would do such a thing. However, the Dragon Emperor frowned and said, "Father doesn't believe it either." But this matter was said by the will of the heavenly way himself. Could it be that the will of the heavenly way would frame Xiao Chen? The Dragon Emperor's words clearly showed the will of the heavenly way's position in the hearts of all living beings. Just as the will of the heavenly way said, it was a fact that all living beings respected and feared the heavens and the earth. Therefore, even in the face of such unbelievable news, the Dragon Emperor still didn't doubt the will of the heavenly way. The heavens and the earth couldn't be wrong, and all living beings had to obey the will of the heavens and the earth. The heavens and the earth were righteous. This was a mark deeply engraved in all living beings. Long Yang didn't say anything after hearing the Dragon Emperor's words. Clearly, his thoughts were also a bit uncertain. This matter was said by the will of the heavenly way, but would the will of the heavenly way lie? Or would the will of the heavenly way frame Xiao Chen? In Long Yang's opinion, the will of the heavenly way clearly wouldn't do such a thing. Long Yang was a bit hesitant, but after a moment of silence, Long Qing suddenly said, "I'm going to the Taiyang sect of the heavenly way and ask the will of the heavenly way face to face." Long Qing also believed in the will of the heavenly way, but she also believed in Xiao Chen. She felt that Xiao Chen definitely wouldn't do such a thing. So she had to go to the Taiyang sect of the heavenly way and ask the will of the heavenly way face to face. The Dragon Emperor didn't stop Long Qing from going to the Taiyang sect of the heavenly way, and Long Yang took the initiative to say, "I'll go with you." Not only Long Qing, but Xin Yuanling also received the news in the Xin Yuan clan. His first reaction was the same as Long Qing's. He didn't believe it either. How could Xiao Chen do such a thing? As Xiao Chen's brother, Xin Yuanling knew very well what kind of person Xiao Chen was. How could he do such a thing? In the hall of the Xin Yuan clan's manor, Xianyuan Ling looked at Xianyuan Songtao and said, "Uncle, I'm going to the Taiyang sect of the Heavenly Way and ask about what happened. I believe that third brother absolutely wouldn't do such a thing." Xianyuan Ling and Long Qing's decision was surprisingly consistent. Both of them wanted to ask the will of the Heavenly Way face to face. They didn't believe that Xiao Chan would actually kill his father and wife. Seeing the resolute look on Xianyuan Ling's face, Xianyuan Songtao sighed softly. He also knew a little about Xiao Chan, but he didn't doubt the will of the Heavenly Way. Xianyuan Songtao pondered for a moment and then said indifferently, "All right, it's also good to go and find out what happened. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." Chapter 1578. Xianyuan Ling and Long Qing didn't believe that Xiao Chan would do such a cruel and crazy thing. So the two of them decided to go to the Taiyang sect in person and ask the will of the Heavenly Way what happened. Not only Long Qing and Xianyuan Ling, but also the others who were familiar with Xiao Chan, such as Xiao Shang, Chun Yu, Emperor Qing, and the others. Even the Divine Lord and Tian Mushi came to the Taiyang sect. Within a day, everyone rushed to the Taiyang sect and told Yin Yangzi that they wanted to meet the will of the Heavenly Way, but there was no reply. Naturally, the will of the Heavenly Way couldn't be met just because they wanted to. Therefore, after making the request, everyone stayed in the Taiyang sect. At the same time, they went to Xiao Chen's cave to check. Ever since the news of Xiao Chen's defection spread, Xiao Chen's cave was sealed. Everything was still the same as that night. They couldn't see the corpses. After all, Qin Shiru, Xiao Qing, and Bai Ryue were all directly blasted into a bloody mist by the will of the Heavenly Way. There seemed to be a faint smell of blood in the air. Long Yang, Long Qing, Xianyuan Ling, the Divine Lord, and Tian Mushi looked around, but they didn't find any clues. They didn't find anything valuable in Xiao Chen's residence. After a night of silence, early the next morning, Yin Yangzi personally found everyone and said that the will of the Heavenly Way agreed to meet them. After receiving this news, Long Qing, Xianyuan Ling, and everyone else were excited. If they could meet the will of the Heavenly Way, they could ask what happened that day. Yin Yangzi personally led everyone to the main hall of the Taiyang sect. Along the way, his mood was extremely complicated. To be honest, he did not believe that Xiao Chan would do such a thing. Therefore, he also hoped to see the will of the Heavenly Way personally and ask him what had happened. In the seventh mainland, Yin Yangzi was probably the closest to Xiao Chan and the great sage who understood Xiao Chan the best. The great sage also knew Xiao Chan, but they weren't familiar with him. Many of them had only interacted with him before, including Xianyuan Songtao. Therefore, after the will of the Heavenly Way announced that Xiao Chan had defected, the great sage, chose to believe him without any hesitation. After all, under their encouragement, heaven and earth represented justice, and the will of heaven and earth was the will of all living beings. Yin Yangzi was the only one who still had doubts. The group arrived at the main hall of the Taiyang sect. When everyone arrived, the will of the Heavenly Way had yet to appear. They did not dare to be presumptuous and could only wait quietly in the middle of the main hall. After about 15 minutes, the will of the Heavenly Way's figure slowly appeared on the main seat in the middle of the main hall. Seeing the will of the Heavenly Way appear, everyone bowed. Seeing this, the will of the Heavenly Way said calmly, "I know why you are here today." Without any nonsense, the will of the Heavenly Way pointed a finger at his collar. Immediately, several five-colored rays of light entered the space between everyone's eyebrows. With the entry of the five-colored rays of light, the scene of that night appeared in front of everyone's eyes. In the night, Xiao Chen's face was cold as he personally killed Qin Shiru, Xiao Qing, Bai Ryue, and the others. During the entire process, Luo Li also watched from the side. After Xiao Chun killed everyone, Luo Li took the two of them and left. The scene ended there. This was naturally not the truth of the matter, but with the will of the Heavenly Way's means, it was not difficult to fake such a scene. On the contrary, it was very simple. After showing everyone this fake scene, Xin Yuanling, Long Qing, and even Yin Yangzi revealed a complicated look in their eyes. How is this possible? How is this possible? How could Xiao Chun do such a thing? Why? Everyone had such doubts in their hearts. Seeing this, the will of the heavenly Wei, who was sitting on the main seat, began to speak. Xiao Chun is the first holy son of the seventh wilderness. I have always had high hopes for him, but who would have thought that this child actually had contact with the seventh realm's realm lord, Luo Li, and defected? Now, the middle-aged man you see in the scene is the Hachibara Senkai's seventh realm's realm lord, Luo Li. He was also the one who took brother, Xiao Chan, away from the seventh wilderness. It was completely irresponsible and confusing the truth. From the will of the heavenly Wei's mouth, the whole matter became that Xiao Chun had defected to the seventh realm. For some unknown reason, he killed his family and finally left with Luo Li. Hearing the will of the heavenly Wei's words, the look in Xin Yuanling and Long Qing's eyes became more and more complicated. This was impossible. Why? Why would third brother defect to the Hachibara Senkai? Moreover, even if he had defected to the Hachibara Senkai, he wouldn't have killed his wife and parents with his own hands, right? It seemed that the evidence was conclusive, but Xin Yuanling and Long Qing still didn't believe it because in their hearts, Xiao Chun was simply not someone who would do such a thing. Xiao Qin's relationship with Qin Shiru and his 4 daughters, and Xiao Qin's filial piety to his parents, were all seen by Xin Yuanling and Long Qing. How could a husband who doted on his wife so much, and a son who was so filial, kill his father and wife? There were still doubts in their hearts, so no one responded to the will of the heavenly Wei. In response, a cold light flashed in the will of the heavenly Wei's eyes, but it was only a flash, and then he said indifferently, "Well, let's not talk about Xiao Qin for now. Today, I came here not only because of your request, but also because of another reason. You should all know about the gate of the immortal realm. Now, the situation in the seventh wilderness is very dangerous, especially in the seventh mainland. Because the gate of the immortal realm is on the seventh mainland, I want to forcibly increase your strength. Only in this way can you deal with the attack from the seventh realm. Now, relax your minds and don't resist. I will give you a spiritual energy empowerment." The will of the heavenly Wei took the initiative to change the topic, indicating that everyone should stop talking about Xiao Chun. He also proposed to increase everyone's cultivation in order to deal with the war that could break out in the seventh mainland at any time. Hearing this, although everyone was still full of doubts, they didn't say anything, including Xin Yuanling and Long Qing. Everyone sat cross-legged and closed their eyes, waiting for the spiritual energy empowerment from the will of the heavenly Wei. Seeing that everyone was sitting cross-legged, a smile flashed in the will of the heavenly Wei's eyes, and then he said slowly, "Relax your mind. Remember, during the whole process, don't resist at all. Please add, please vote, please recommend." Chapter 1579. The spiritual energy infusion helped everyone increase their cultivation. No one doubted the will of the heavenly Wei's words. Therefore, even Xin Yuanling and Long Qing followed the will of the heavenly Wei's words and relaxed their minds. They trusted him completely and did not put up any defenses. Soon, everyone felt a mysterious power enter their bodies. At first, no one had any special reaction to the appearance of this power. However, after just a dozen breaths, everyone felt this power rush into their minds. Caught off guard and completely defenseless, everyone lost consciousness in an instant. In fact, no one knew that the will of the heavenly Wei was tampering with everyone's memories at this time. It deeply imprinted the matter of Xiao Chun killing his parents in everyone's minds as if they had seen it with their own eyes. Moreover, the will of the heavenly Wei had buried hatred for Xiao Chun in everyone's hearts. To put it simply, after this memory tampering, if everyone present met Xiao Chun again, they would no longer remember their past with Xiao Chun. They would only treat Xiao Chun as their mortal enemy. Tampering with memories was something that only experts at the level of the will of the heavenly way and Luo Li could do. Even an almighty figure like the Wine Taoist could not do this. However, there was a very important condition to tampering with a person's memories. The person being tampered with must not have any resistance or resistance. Otherwise, it would be impossible to tamper with the memories. If the tampering continued, the person being tampered with would probably become mentally retarded. Therefore, this method of tampering with memories was basically useless under normal circumstances. It was because of this harsh condition that the will of the heavenly way did not choose to tamper with Xiao Chen's memories. Otherwise, as long as Xiao Chen's memories were tampered with, Xiao Chen would naturally not know the truth. Of course, Xiao Chen could not cooperate with the will of the heavenly way to tamper with his memories. However, the real reason was that Xiao Chen had refined the power of living beings and had condensed the ancestral spirit in his body. The will of the heavenly way could not tamper with his memories. Even if Xiao Chen cooperated, the will of the heavenly way could not do this. Therefore, it could only choose to kill Xiao Chen. As for Qin Shu and the other girls, the will of the heavenly way did not care about them at all. It was not worth it to tamper with their memories. After all, tampering with memories was a very taxing task. It was very tiring. For example, right now, dense beads of sweat had already appeared on the forehead of the will of the heavenly Tao. To tamper with a person's memories without harming that person's mind, this was definitely a technical job. The slightest bit of carelessness could cause irreversible damage. It was also because there was no other way that the will of the heavenly way chose to tamper with everyone's memories. Everyone present was close to Xiao Chen. Moreover, Long Qing, Long Yang, Tian Mushi, the Divine Lord, Xin Yuan Ling, and Yin Yangzi were all famous figures in the Seventh Mainland. Xiao Chen had already defected. If the will of the heavenly way killed these people at this time, even a pig would definitely notice that something was wrong. These people could not be killed, so he could only tamper with their memories. The will of the heavenly way also knew that he could not deceive them for long. With Xin Yuan Ling, Long Qing, and the others' relationship with Xiao Chen, the truth would come to light as soon as they saw Xiao Chen. Therefore, it was better to be a little more tired. Tampering with their memories was the safest way. After more than 10 hours, the will of the heavenly way exhaled a mouthful of turbid air and was finally considered to be done. After successfully tampering with everyone's memories, the will of the heavenly way's face turned a little pale, but the corners of his mouth curved into a cold smile. Now, even if Xiao Chen was fine, if they met again in the future, no one would believe him, including his best friends, Xin Yuan Ling and Long Qing. Seeing that the people still did not wake up, the will of the heavenly way smiled coldly and disappeared from the hall. In order to maintain his image, the will of the heavenly way had indeed gone to great lengths. However, there was no other way. The heavens and the earth were equal, but the heavens and the earth had told them a big lie. Moreover, the heavens and the earth needed the power of all living beings, so the will of the heavenly way needed the trust of all living beings. After a lie, more lies were needed to make up for it. After more than half an hour, Yin Yangzi was the first to wake up. Then, a trace of confusion flashed in his eyes. He looked around and muttered, "Why am I here?" He had no idea why he was in the great hall of the heavenly Yin Sun sect, nor did he know that he had met the will of the heavenly way. Following Yin Yangzi's awakening, the Divine Lord, Tian Mushi, Long Yang, Long Qing, Xin Yuan Ling, and the others woke up one after another. Each and every one of them had a perplexed look on their faces. However, this perplexity was quickly replaced by the hatred in their hearts. With their memories tampered with, everyone seemed to have seen Xiao Chen kill his father and wife with their own eyes. Xin Yuan Ling's eyes were filled with hatred as he said, "Xiao Chen, I, Xin Yuan Ling, have always regarded you as a brother of life and death. I didn't expect you to do such a thing. From today onwards, I, Xin Yuan Ling, sever all ties with you. In the future, I will spend the rest of my life killing you to avenge my adoptive parents." The adoptive parents that Xin Yuanling mentioned were naturally Shao Qing and Bai Ruyue. It could be seen that Xin Yuanling's killing intent was not fake at all. He really wanted to sever all ties with Shao Chun and really wanted to kill Shao Chun. As Xin Yuanling's voice fell, Long Qing also said fiercely, "Big brother is right. From today onwards, I will sever all ties with Shao Chun, this bastard. I will kill him in the future." Xin Yuanling and Long Qing shouted. Then, everyone present echoed, including Yin Yangzi. It could be seen that everyone's hatred for Shao Chun had reached a peak. They wanted nothing more than to eat his flesh and drink his blood. Now that the memories had been tampered with, everyone had already regarded Shao Chun as someone who was worse than a dog and a beast who had killed his own father and wife. Unaware that everyone's memories had been tampered with by the will of the Heavenly Way, Shao Chun was currently in the Seventh Realm's Black Palace. Several days had passed, and Shao Chun had not taken a single step out of his room. Of course, there were also experts from the Seventh Realm guarding outside Shao Chun's room. On this day, as usual, Shao Chun sat alone in his room, motionless, as if he was dead. At this moment, the door was pushed open and Luo Li walked in. This was the first time that Luo Li had seen Shao Chun since he had brought Shao Chun back to the Seventh Realm's palace. However, when he saw Shao Chun for the first time, even Luo Li could not help but be stunned. It could be said that his hair had turned white overnight. At this moment, Shao Chun's hair had turned white overnight. His hair was as white as snow, and he looked demonic, lonely, and sad. Not only that, but Shao Chun's eyes had also turned from black to blood red. The red was so bright that it made people's hearts palpitate, begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1580. In just a few days, Shao Chun gave people the feeling that he had become a completely different person. If Shao Chun gave people the feeling that he was out of this world before, then Shao Chun now gave people the feeling that he was bewitching. With his white hair and blood-red eyes, Shao Chun gave people the feeling that he was bewitching. Although his appearance was still as handsome as before, his temperament had completely changed. Facing such a big change in Shao Chun, even Luo Li couldn't help but be slightly stunned. It was hard to imagine what kind of trauma a person had experienced to have such a big change. Facing the somewhat stunned Luo Li, Shao Chun just looked at him quietly without saying anything. After being stunned for a moment, Luo Li came back to his senses and sat down opposite Shao Chun. Looking at Shao Chun in front of him, Luo Li's expression was calm, but there was still a trace of shock in his heart. Luo Li actually already knew about Shao Chun's past. With the strength of the Seventh Realm, it was not difficult to investigate a person. Coming from the small heavenly Chan continent, Shao Chun was indeed admirable for being able to come all the way to this point. However, perhaps because Shao Chun's path was too smooth, this time, the will of the heavenly way made Shao Chun feel powerless and desperate for the first time in his life. In life, no one had a smooth sailing. Everyone would encounter setbacks. Shao Chun had been carrying the halo of a heaven's pride since he was a child, but this time, the halo of a heaven's pride seemed so fragile in front of the will of the heavenly way. Luo Li looked at Shao Chun, and Shao Chun also looked at Luo Li. Those blood-red eyes seemed to be able to suck people's souls, making people unable to help but be absent-minded. Their eyes met, and in the end, it was Luo Li who spoke first. He took out a necklace from his arms and placed it in front of Shao Chun. This necklace was nothing special. It was just composed of 12 thumb-sized black beads. It looked very ordinary. However, when he saw this necklace, Shao Chun's eyes changed. He took the necklace without hesitation. That's right, this necklace contained the remnant souls of Qin Shiru and others. Each bead represented a person's remnant soul. Qin Shiru, Baiwa Fairy, Guling Yao, Tian Yu, Shao Qing, Bai Ruyue, Qing Yao, Qing Luo, Fei Mei and Lan, Lu Zhu, and Si Ju. 12 people, exactly 12 beads. This necklace was personally refined by Luo Li. It only had one function. and that was to preserve everyone's remnant souls and not let them dissipate. Holding the necklace in his hand, Xiao Chun could clearly feel everyone's aura. Unknowingly, Xiao Chen's eyes became moist again. Xiao Chen also gently placed the necklace on his chest. This necklace was Xiao Chen's family. Being able to feel the aura of Qin Shu and the other two women, as well as Xiao Qing and Bai Ruyue, Xiao Chun tightly pressed the necklace to his chest as if he wanted to feel the warmth of his family. Seeing Xiao Chen's appearance, Luo Li said indifferently, "This necklace guarantees that their remnant souls will not dissipate. However, if you want to use this remnant soul to revive them, you will need the origin power of the will of the heavenly way. In other words, if you want to revive your family, the only way is to kill the will of the heavenly way." If he wanted to revive Qin Shu and the others, he could only use the origin power of the will of the heavenly way. Only by killing the will of the heavenly way could everyone be revived. Xiao Chen ignored Luo Li's words. He still held the seemingly ordinary necklace tightly in his hand and looked at Luo Li without replying. Seeing this, Luo Li asked, "What do you think, Xiao Chen? Are you willing to become the heir of the seventh realm?" Luo Li was not a hesitant person. He had saved Xiao Chen so that he could become the heir of the seventh realm. There was still a chance that Qin Shu and the other women could be revived. This way, Xiao Chen also had hope in his heart. Although he had to kill the will of the heavenly way to revive Qin Shu and the others, Xiao Chen would not even frown if he had to kill all living beings, let alone kill the will of the heavenly way. If Xiao Chen could not even protect his own family, did he still have to care about good and evil? Seeing hope, Xiao Chen's shattered state of mind began to show signs of recovery. As long as he could revive Qin Shu and the others, Xiao Chen would not give up. However, after this incident, Xiao Chen had clearly changed greatly. Xiao Chen stared at Luo Li with his blood-red eyes. After a while, he said, "Okay." Although it was just a simple word, the voice was extremely indifferent, without the slightest trace of emotion. Xiao Chen agreed to Luo Li's invitation. The reason was simple: to revive Qin Shu and the others, he had to rely on the power of the Hachibara Sunkai and Luo Li. To the people of the seventh wilderness, the seventh realm was evil and a group of villains. However, this was nothing to Xiao Chen now. Not to mention a group of villains. Even if they were demons, Xiao Chen would not hesitate to cooperate with them as long as they could revive Qin Shu and the others. He would even sell his soul, since he could not even protect his own family. How could Xiao Chen care about other things? The difference between good and evil was no longer important to Xiao Chen now. So what if they were demons? As long as he could revive his family, it did not matter even if Xiao Chen became a demon. Seeing Xiao Chen nod, Luo Li's smile became even brighter. He smiled and nodded. "Welcome to the Hachibara Sankai." Luo Li naturally thought highly of Xiao Chen. No matter how one looked at it, Xiao Chen was stronger than Yushu Jin. Such a peerless genius was the heir apparent the seventh realm needed. After chatting with Xiao Chen for a while, Luo Li told Xiao Chen that he would arrange for Xiao Chen to meet the other strong cultivators of the seventh realm tomorrow. Xiao Chen did not really care about the heir apparent of the seventh realm, so he did not pay much attention to Luo Li's words. He kept looking at the necklace in his hand as if it was all he had. Seeing this, Luo Li did not stay for long and quickly left. After Luo Li left, Xiao Chen still stared at the necklace in his hand. Yes, this seemingly ordinary necklace was all that Xiao Chen had. From it, Xiao Chen could feel the aura of his family. He pressed the necklace against his heart, as if he wanted to feel more warmth from it. His blood-red eyes were filled with tenderness and determination. After a while, Xiao Chen murmured to himself, "Don't worry, I will definitely revive you. Please collect, vote, recommend." Chapter 1581. Reviving his family had become Xiao Chen's only motivation to continue living. Xiao Chen's heart had already given up after this blow. However, when he learned from Luo Li that there was a way to revive his family, a glimmer of hope appeared in Xiao Chen's heart. What people feared the most was having no hope. If a person had no hope for the future, there was no meaning in living. Now, Xiao Chun had found a reason to continue living, which was to revive his family. In order to achieve this goal, Xiao Chun could give up anything. Good and evil, black and white, good and evil. These were no longer important to Xiao Chun. If he couldn't even protect his family, how could Xiao Chun have the time to care about these things? Moreover, after today's incident, Xiao Qin's mentality had completely changed. Now, in Xiao Qin's eyes, good and evil were simply jokes. The only thing he could trust was the sword in his hand. From now on, no matter who tried to stop him, he would only kill them with his sword. Reviving his family was Xiao Qin's only goal. No one could stop him from achieving this goal. He swore in his heart. Then, Xiao Chun hung the necklace around his neck. In this way, Xiao Chun could feel a trace of warmth. Live on in order to revive his family. Moreover, Xiao Chun would never let such a thing happen again. Xiao Chun didn't want to experience the kind of helplessness and despair again. Therefore, he had to become stronger. He had to be so strong that even the heavens and earth feared him. A surge of coldness burst out of his eyes. After this huge change, Xiao Chun was indeed a completely different person from before. After a silent night, early the next morning, a powerful figure in the immortal realm from the seventh realm knocked on Xiao Qin's door and said respectfully, "Your Excellency, it's time." Today was the day that Luo Li would announce that Xiao Chun had become the heir of the seventh realm. As the powerful figure spoke, the door was opened. Then, Xiao Chun walked out in a white robe. It was still the white robe that Xiao Chun loved to wear, but at this time, it felt completely different from before. With snow-white skin, snow-white hair, and a pair of blood-red eyes, Xiao Chun gave off an incomparably demonic feeling. He didn't reveal any aura. Facing Xiao Chun, he didn't know why, but he felt a trace of nervousness and fear. Xiao Chun was in the immortal realm, and this person was also in the immortal realm. However, in front of Xiao Chun, he actually felt terrified and nervous. He didn't know why he had such a feeling, but it was precisely because of this that he naturally spoke to Xiao Chun respectfully. "Heir, it's time to go." Naturally, he behaved respectfully to Xiao Chun. In response, Xiao Chun didn't even look at him. He said indifferently, "Lead the way." Such a tone and attitude would never appear on Xiao Chun before, although Xiao Chun used to be indifferent too. However, Xiao Chun's indifference now was indifference to the world and everything in the world. It was as if he didn't care about anything at all. Even if the world collapsed, Xiao Chun wouldn't care. What kind of attitude did a person have to be so indifferent to everything in the world? Xiao Chun did not say anything else as soon as he finished speaking. The immortal from the seventh realm respectfully led the way all the way to the main hall. It wasn't a secret in the seventh realm that Luo Li was going to announce Xiao Chun as the heir of the seventh realm. Many people knew about it. However, many people actually didn't accept Xiao Chun. After all, Xiao Chun used to be the pride of the seventh wilderness. Now, he had become the heir of the seventh realm as soon as he joined the seventh realm. How could they accept this? Even if Xiao Chun had defeated Yushu Jin and obtained the power of all living beings, so he was now in the immortal realm. So what? After all, Xiao Chun didn't contribute anything to the seventh realm. How could they accept a person who didn't contribute anything to the seventh realm suddenly becoming the heir of the seventh realm? At this moment, thousands of people had gathered in the main hall. It could be said that almost all the strong figures in the seventh realm had gathered here. As mentioned before, the Hachibara Sunkai was different from other forces. They had high requirements for recruiting members. The weakest member had to be in the immortal realm. Of course, the younger generation didn't count. Moreover, the younger generation in the Hachibara Senkai were almost all the descendants of the strong figures of the older generation. Therefore, they were born in the Hachibara Senkai. There were less than 1,000 strong figures in the seventh realm. Including the younger generation, there were about 2,000 people. Basically, all of them had gathered in the main hall. They gathered in groups of 3 or 5. Because Xiao Chun and Luo Li hadn't shown up yet, they behaved very casually. Of course, this had something to do with the atmosphere of the seventh realm. As the realm lord of the seventh realm, Luo Li rarely punished his subordinates. He was also very easygoing. In addition, there weren't many rules in the seventh realm. Therefore, the members of the seventh realm behaved very casually as long as it wasn't a formal occasion. Luo Li had never scolded them. The strong figures of the older generation didn't have much opinion about Xiao Chun becoming the heir of the seventh realm. Although they were unhappy, they couldn't do anything about it since Luo Li had already decided. However, compared to their parents, the younger generation of geniuses did not think so. In the northern underworld fairyland, almost all the young talents of the seventh realm had seen Xiao Chun and witnessed Xiao Chen's strength with their own eyes. To be honest, they acknowledged Xiao Chen's strength. However, strength and prestige were two different things. Xiao Chun had just joined the seventh realm. It could be said that among the young talents, Xiao Chun didn't have any prestige at all. Therefore, these young talents naturally didn't want Xiao Chun to become the heir of the seventh realm. The young talents were very conflicted about this matter. Xiao Chun and Luo Li hadn't shown up yet. More than a dozen talents gathered around Yu Shujin. They were all Yu Shujin's loyal followers. They were also the group of people who disliked Xiao Chun the most. Looking at Yu Shujin, a beautiful girl said in a coquettish voice, "Brother Shujin, why should Xiao Chun be the heir of the seventh realm? I really don't know what the realm lord is thinking." This girl was very beautiful. Even in the seventh wilderness, she would be a first-class beauty. Judging from the love in her eyes when she spoke, it was obvious that she adored Yu Shujin. Perhaps it was because of this that she disliked Xiao Chun very much. Even though she had never interacted with Xiao Chun before, she still bore a grudge against him. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 1582. She didn't want Xiao Chun to become the heir of the seventh realm at all. Hearing her words, the prides from the seventh realm around her all chimed in. That's right. Only Brother Shujin is qualified to be the heir of the seventh realm. No one else is qualified. These geniuses were all Yu Shujin's lackeys. Therefore, they naturally stood on her side. However, upon hearing these words, Yu Shujin did not say anything. Although her face remained calm, she was feeling extremely bitter in her heart. Previously, he'd lost to Xiao Chun in the northern underworld celestial realm. His confidence had already been damaged. Now, Xiao Chun must have gotten the power of living beings. In this way, Xiao Chun had already entered the immortal realm, while Yu Shujin was still at the lesser completion of the secondary saint realm. The gap between them had been completely widened. What right did Yu Shujin have to compete with Xiao Chun for the heir's position? Moreover, as the former heir of the seventh realm, Yu Shujin could guess some of Luo Li's thoughts. Now, except for the seventh realm, the other heirs of the Hachibara Sankai had all entered the immortal realm and formed the heavenly immortal mansion. Only Yu Shujin, the heir of the seventh realm, couldn't form the heavenly immortal mansion and enter the immortal realm because he still couldn't get the power of living beings. Without forming the heavenly immortal mansion and reaching the immortal realm, Yu Shujin wasn't qualified to be the heir of the seventh realm anymore. Compared to the other seven heirs of the Hachibara Sankai, Yu Shujin wasn't qualified to be the heir of the seventh realm anymore. Now that Xiao Chun had gotten the power of living beings, formed the heavenly immortal mansion, and reached the immortal realm, he was indeed the most suitable person to be the heir of the seventh realm. To be honest, Yu Shujin didn't have much attachment to the heir of the seventh realm anymore. Since he could become the heir of the seventh realm, Yu Shujin wasn't someone who couldn't let go. Since Xiao Chun was stronger than him and had gotten the power of living beings, it was natural for him to become the heir of the seventh realm. Ignoring the words of the people around him, Yu Shujin actually felt relieved in his heart. It had to be said that Yu Shujin's state of mind was indeed not bad. Just by having such a state of mind, Yu Shujin's future achievements would not be low. As the geniuses gathered around Yu Shujin and discussed, Xiao Chun was led into the hall by the seventh realm's immortal realm expert. When they saw Xiao Chun appear, everyone's gaze naturally turned toward Xiao Chun. After all, many of them had never seen Xiao Chun before. Naturally, They were curious about Xiao Chun. Compared with the others, the young geniuses from the seventh realm were all shocked when they saw Xiao Chun. Everyone couldn't help but look shocked, including Yu Shujin. They had seen Xiao Chun in the northern underworld immortal realm, but how long had it been? Less than half a month? How did Xiao Chun become like this? His hair was white, and his eyes had turned from black to blood red. If it weren't for the fact that his appearance hadn't changed, perhaps they wouldn't have recognized him as Xiao Chun. They didn't know what had happened to Xiao Chun. After all, it was a secret. If Luli didn't mention it, not many people would know about it. Not only had his appearance changed drastically, but his temperament had also changed. That's right, Xiao Chun gave off an indifferent feeling, as though he was indifferent to everything. Is he really Xiao Chun? At that moment, someone couldn't help but ask. It couldn't be helped. It was entirely because Xiao Chun had changed too much. They couldn't believe that it was the same person. Yu Shujin knitted her brows, and a strange glint flashed in her eyes. She stared fixedly at Xiao Chun. While she was shocked, she was also puzzled. What could have happened to make a person undergo such a drastic change in such a short period of time? Ignoring everyone's gazes, Xiao Chun strode directly to the center of the hall. Because Luli hadn't arrived yet, everyone could only wait. Xiao Chun didn't intend to greet anyone at all. He just stood there quietly, as though everything around him had nothing to do with him. Xiao Chun was indifferent. But to everyone's surprise, Yu Shujin took the initiative to approach Xiao Chun and said with a smile, "Xiao Chun, we meet again." There wasn't the slightest hostility on her face. Thinking about it, Yu Shujin didn't even care about the heir's seat. Obviously, she wouldn't hold a grudge against Xiao Chun. Yu Shujin's state of mind was indeed very good. At least, the other experts of the older generation present secretly nodded their heads and praised him. However, in the face of Yu Shujin's initiative to greet him, Xiao Chun only nodded slightly. He didn't even say a word. His attitude was extremely cold. Yu Shujin didn't expect Xiao Chun's indifference. But what made him more curious was what had happened to Xiao Chun. Why had brother Xiao Chun changed so much? He wanted to ask, but he didn't know where to start. Moreover, to put it bluntly, Yu Shujin wasn't very familiar with Xiao Chun. It didn't seem appropriate to ask directly like this. After giving it some thought, Yu Shujin decided to give up. She shook her head with a bitter smile and was about to retreat to the side. However, just as Yu Shujin was about to leave, her followers were unwilling to let her go, especially the young lady who spoke to Yu Shujin earlier. They already hated Xiao Chun because Xiao Chun had stolen Yu Shujin's heir seat. Now that Yu Shujin had taken the initiative to greet Xiao Chun had only nodded slightly. This made them even more unhappy. Xiao Chun, don't go overboard. Brother Shujin has already forgiven you, yet you're still ignoring him. What's the meaning of this? The pretty girl shouted without hesitation, Xiao Chun, don't go overboard. Brother Shujin has already forgiven you. The girl was angry purely because Xiao Chun ignored Yu Shujin. However, Xiao Chun didn't seem to care about the girl's scolding at all. There was no color in his blood-red eyes. He didn't care at all. It could even be said that he was ignoring her. Seeing this, the girl became even more anxious. But at this time, before she could say anything, a young genius beside her said angrily, "You're so self-righteous. You were born with a mother, but didn't teach you anything." Xiao Chun looked at the young man as soon as he finished speaking. He had only muttered under his breath at first, but Xiao Chun immediately turned to look at the young man. Being locked on by Xiao Chun's blood-red eyes, the young man didn't know why, but he felt as if he had fallen into an abyss. He couldn't help but shudder. How could there be such a gaze in the world? There was no anger at all. However, what the young genius didn't expect was that when Xiao Chun looked at him, without any warning, the dustless sword appeared in his hand. Then, he slashed at the young man, begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation. Chapter 1583. No one had expected that Xiao Chun would suddenly attack. Moreover, it was obvious that Xiao Chun did not hold back at all. It was obvious that he intended to kill the young man with one strike. The blood-red sword blade was filled with strong killing intent. Looking at the sudden scene, the other experts of the seventh realm frowned. Some of them even couldn't help but say, "What's wrong with you? What a strong killing intent. This guy has a strong killing intent." At that moment, Xiao Qian's sword was filled with extremely dense killing intent. There was nothing else other than that. Furthermore, even the original golden spiritual power had turned blood red at that moment, as if it wanted to kill all living things in the world. An expert of the older generation murmured softly. It was worth noting that even old monsters like them, who had lived for who knows how many years, could not have such a strong killing intent like Xiao Qian's. They really did not know how Xiao Qian had cultivated his killing intent. However, now is not the time to talk about this. Xiao Qian attacked without saying a word. At this moment, facing Xiao Qian's sword, that young genius was already scared out of his wits. Xiao Qian's killing intent was so strong that it was enough to affect the young genius's mind. Facing this demonic blood-red sword, the young genius was directly killed. He was only at the beginning of the quasi-saint realm, while Xiao Qian was now at the immortal realm. With Xiao Qian's strength, it was indeed not difficult for him to kill this young genius. The blood-red blade sliced through the air. Just when the young genius thought that he was about to die, a voice suddenly appeared in front of the young man. He did not seem to have done anything, but he simply waved his hand and shattered Xiao Qian's sword attack. The person who suddenly attacked was a white-haired old man with a kind face. After blocking the sword for the young genius, the old man looked at Xiao Qian and said indifferently, "Little guy, it's not good to have such a strong killing intent at such a young age." The old man was obviously an expert from the seventh realm. Hearing his words, Xiao Qian glanced at him indifferently with his blood-red eyes. Then, he withdrew his gaze and ignored him. However, he did not continue to attack. Xiao Qian's attitude was extremely indifferent. That young genius dared to use his mother as an excuse, and Xiao Qian had indeed intended to kill him. However, with the elder making his move, Xiao Qian knew that he would not be able to succeed that day. Since that was the case, there was no need to waste any more words. Xiao Qian could not see through the old man's specific cultivation, but he was sure that the old man's cultivation was definitely beyond the immortal realm. In fact, it was far beyond the immortal realm. Xiao Qian had condensed the heavenly immortal mansion and broken through to the immortal realm, but he did not think that he had the strength to do whatever he wanted in the seventh realm. After all, if a mighty figure in the immortal realm could do whatever he wanted in the seventh realm, then the seventh wilderness would not be helpless against the seventh realm. Xiao Qian was still not strong enough to face the experts of the older generation in the seventh realm. After all, these people were old monsters who had lived for countless years. Many of them had existed since the Antiquity Age and the Archean Age. Of course, apart from the older generation, Xiao Qian's strength was definitely at the top of the younger generation. He could absolutely crush them. Seeing Xiao Qian withdraw his gaze without saying a word, the old man did not say anything more. However, in his heart, the old man still felt that Xiao Qian's killing intent was too strong. At such a young age, he already had such a strong killing intent. Moreover, Xiao Qian's strength was so terrifying. The old man really did not know what this boy would become in the future. Perhaps he would become a demon who slaughtered others. Shaking his head gently, the old man slowly walked away. Since Xiao Qian did not make any more moves, it was obvious that he would not bully Xiao Qian either. Although he survived, the young genius was still in a daze. He had really felt the breath of death just now. If this was not the palace of the seventh realm, he had no doubt that Xiao Qian's sword would have killed him here. He was completely stunned by Xiao Qian. At this time, the geniuses who had opposed Xiao Qian becoming the heir of the seventh realm all shut their mouths obediently. What a joke! Who would pull out a sword and kill someone just because of a disagreement? Besides, they were in the main hall of the seventh realm. Almost all the experts of the seventh realm were gathered here. On such an important occasion, It was really unheard of for Xiao Chan to pull out a sword and kill someone just because of a disagreement. The young geniuses of the Seventh Realm were all stunned by Xiao Chen's actions. As for the older experts, most of them thought that Xiao Chen's strong killing intent was not a good thing. If he had such a strong killing intent at such a young age, it was very likely that his mind would be devoured by his killing intent in the future. Most of the older experts did not agree with such a person becoming the heir of the Seventh Realm. At first, many people did not think much of Xiao Chan becoming the heir of the Seventh Realm. After all, Xiao Chen's talent and strength were obvious. Moreover, since he had joined the Hachibara Sankai, it was not a big deal for him to become the heir of the Seventh Realm. However, after seeing Xiao Chen's strong killing intent, most people thought that Xiao Chan was not suitable to become the heir of the Seventh Realm. As the leader of the younger generation, the heir of the Seventh Realm would definitely enjoy great treatment. In the Seventh Realm, the status of the heir of the Seventh Realm was only below that of Luo Li, the Realm Lord. If such an important position was given to someone with such a strong killing intent, it would not be a good thing. Many of the older experts thought to themselves. They thought that when Luo Li came later, they would definitely persuade the Realm Lord to change his mind. Xiao Chan did not know what the people around him were thinking. Of course, he was not interested in knowing. Moreover, Xiao Chan did not care about the so-called heir of the Seventh Realm. They all felt that their killing intent was very strong. But who knew what had happened to Xiao Chan? If they had encountered the same thing, their killing intent would not be much weaker than Xiao Chen's. As for the so-called heir of the Seventh Realm, in Xiao Chen's eyes, it was worthless. Xiao Chan had once been known as the first saint of the Seventh Wilderness, but so what? It was just a false reputation. When faced with the will of the heavenly way, Xiao Chan, the first saint of the Seventh Wilderness, was still so powerless and so desperate. In the end, he could not even protect his family. Therefore, Xiao Chan did not care about the so-called heir of the Seventh Realm, because it was just a false reputation. If a real expert wanted to kill you, what could you do even if you were an heir of the Seventh Realm? Exuding endless coldness, Xiao Chan ignored everyone. No one dared to approach Xiao Chan. The younger generation was completely stunned by Xiao Chan. The older generation thought that Xiao Chan was too murderous and did not want to have too much contact with him. Please add, vote, recommend. Chapter 1584. No one came forward to talk to Xiao Chan. Only Xiao Chan stood alone in the center of the hall. However, Xiao Chan didn't care about this at all. To be honest, Xiao Chan wasn't in the mood to pay attention to these people. Obviously, the people of the Seventh Realm all thought that Xiao Chan was a murderous man who had drawn his sword to kill without saying a word, and his killing intent was so strong. No one dared to provoke Xiao Chan anymore. The young geniuses also shut their mouths. Only Yu Shujin looked at Xiao Chan thoughtfully. No one knew what she was thinking. Everyone waited like this, and the atmosphere in the hall became a little depressing. Fortunately, Luo Li soon appeared in the hall. Luo Li glanced at Xiao Chan, who was standing alone in the center of the hall, and then at everyone present. He smiled and said, "Sorry for being late." It had to be said that Luo Li, the Realm Lord of the Seventh Realm, was indeed very approachable. However, after hearing his words, an expert of the older generation stood up and said, "Realm Lord, I have something to say about the selection of the heir apparent." Hearing this, Luo Li's face didn't change at all. He still smiled and said, "Oh, let's hear it. I don't think Xiao Chan is suitable to be the heir apparent of the Seventh Realm. He's too murderous and has just joined the Seventh Realm. How can he be the heir apparent of the Seventh Realm?" Hearing this, the expert of the older generation said bluntly. Many people subconsciously looked at Xiao Chan as soon as he said that. They were secretly relieved when they saw that Xiao Chan did not react at all. Many of them were afraid that Xiao Chan would draw his sword and kill again if he did not agree with them. Little did they know that Xiao Chan did not care about the so-called heir of Kunlun Field at all. In fact, he did not care about it at all. Xiao Chan completely ignored the elder. He did not say a word and did not even look at him. At the same time, Luo Li's expression did not change in the slightest when he heard this. He swept his gaze across the crowd and said calmly, "Don't worry, Xiao Chun, don't worry. What about you guys? Don't you agree?" He asked for the opinions of the others. Seeing this, everyone present nodded silently. It was obvious that they agreed with him. Everyone didn't agree with Xiao Chun becoming the heir apparent of the seventh realm. Facing this scene, Luo Li didn't get angry, nor did he scold them. He still smiled and said, "You think that Xiao Chun is unconvinced because he just joined the seventh realm and became the heir apparent. But let me ask you, is there anyone else in the seventh realm other than Xiao Chun? Hachibara Senkai, the heirs of the other realms have all received the power of living beings, broken through the immortal realm, and condensed the heavenly immortal mansion. In the seventh realm, only Xiao Chun has met this requirement. If Xiao Chun doesn't become the heir apparent, is there anyone else in the younger generation? The heir apparent of the seventh realm represents the face of the seventh realm. When the Hachibara Senkai gathers in the future, if the heir apparent of the seventh realm hasn't even reached the immortal realm, it will be a joke." Luo Li was right. The heir of Kunlun's field was the face of a realm, especially for the younger generation. Among the younger generation of the seventh realm, only Xiao Chun had met the requirements to become an heir of Kunlun's field. Hearing Luo Li's words, everyone fell silent. Indeed, Luo Li was right. Xiao Chun was indeed the most suitable candidate to become the heir apparent of the seventh realm. However, although Xiao Chun's strength and talent were very strong, his murderous intent was too strong. This was what everyone was most worried about. Everyone was reluctant to let someone with such a strong murderous intent become the heir apparent of the seventh realm. However, to everyone's surprise, just as Luo Li finished speaking and everyone chose to remain silent, Yu Shujin spoke first. "I agree with the Sector Lord. Xiao Chun is indeed the most suitable candidate for the heir apparent of the seventh realm." As the previous heir of Kunlun's field, Yu Shujin had actually taken the initiative to say such words at this time, and even supported Xiao Chun. It was something that no one had expected. After all, Xiao Chun had replaced Yu Shujin's position, but Yu Shujin still spoke up for Xiao Chun. Looking at Yu Shujin's expression, it was clear that there was no hatred at all. It was obvious that Yu Shujin's words were his true thoughts. He really thought that Xiao Chun was very suitable to be the heir of Kunlun's field. Yu Shujin's words and Luo Li's strong support for Xiao Chun made everyone choose to give in. Seeing this, Luo Li looked at Yu Shujin and smiled. Then he said directly, "In this case, Xiao Chun will be the heir apparent of the seventh realm from now on." Luo Li made the decision. Hearing this, no one objected. In this way, Xiao Chun would become the heir apparent of the seventh realm. Luo Li looked at Xiao Chun and smiled. "Xiao Chun, it's up to you now." Hearing Luo Li's words, Xiao Chun just glanced at him indifferently and then turned to leave. Xiao Chun wasn't interested in becoming the heir apparent of the seventh realm. Seeing Xiao Chun choose to leave without saying anything, everyone frowned slightly. What kind of attitude was that? However, Luo Li didn't care. He knew what had happened to Xiao Chun. His original state of mind had already collapsed, so it was reasonable for his personality to change. Xiao Chun directly left the main hall. Then Luo Li also left. Everyone else also dispersed. Everyone walked out of the main hall one after another. Yu Shujin was still surrounded by many young geniuses from the seventh realm. Everyone gathered around Yu Shujin. Some of them were still dissatisfied. What's Xiao Chen's attitude? Brother Shujin spoke up for him, but he didn't even say thank you. He's so arrogant. Everyone was extremely dissatisfied with Xiao Chen's attitude. They felt that Xiao Chun was too arrogant. Earlier, Yu Shujin had personally expressed her support for Xiao Chun to become the heir apparent. But Xiao Chun didn't even say thank you. As the Sky Pride spoke, the other Sky Prides also began to express their dissatisfaction. Yu Shujin didn't say much about this. She secretly wondered what had happened to make Xiao Chun change so much. She'd fought with Xiao Chun before. At that time, Shao Chun was completely different from now. It wasn't just his appearance. Now, Shao Chun felt like an ice cube. He was cold and unapproachable. Moreover, he had a terrifying murderous aura. When she fought with Shao Chun before, Yu Shujin hadn't felt such a strong murderous aura from Shao Chun. How much hatred did Shao Chun have in his heart to have such a murderous aura? Please add, vote, recommend. Chapter 1585. Yu Shujin was very curious about Shao Chun's great change. She knew that something must have happened to Shao Chun. Otherwise, how could a person become like this for no reason? Shao Chun became the heir of the seventh realm. Of course, not many people in the seventh realm believed in Shao Chun, but Shao Chun didn't care. He returned to his cave residence. As the heir of the seventh realm, Shao Chun naturally had his own cave residence in the palace of the seventh realm. It was the best cave residence, second only to Luo Li. In the cave residence, on a misty mountain peak, Shao Chun sat alone on the ground. He held a flagon in his hand and kept drinking. At the same time, his blood-red eyes were filled with sorrow. Now, as long as he was free, Shao Chun couldn't help but think of Qin Shu and the other two women, as well as Shao Qing and Bai Riyue. An indescribable sense of loneliness kept growing in his heart. He couldn't share this pain with others. No one could understand the pain in Shao Chun's heart. If it weren't for the hope of reviving his family, Shao Chun would have killed himself long ago. There was a trace of drunkenness in Shao Chun's eyes, but other than that, there was a touch of determination in his eyes. He would find a way to revive his family. This was Shao Chun's only wish now. It was also the only motivation for him to live. As long as he could revive his family, Shao Chun was willing to do anything. Similarly, he could give up anything. He bore the loneliness and pain in his heart alone, like an injured beast licking its wounds alone. After Shao Chun successfully became the heir of the seventh realm, he left the main hall. At this time, more than 10 strong people from the seventh realm gathered in Luo Li's cave residence. Their cultivation levels were far beyond the immortal realm. It could be said that they were the strongest group of people in the seventh realm after Luo Li. Everyone gathered together casually. Luo Li, who was sitting on a main seat, was also very easygoing. Looking at more than 10 people present, Luo Li said with a smile, "It's about time to break the seal on the gate to the immortal domain." The construction of the gate of the celestial realm had been completed long ago. Luo Li hadn't done anything before, but now the time had come. As long as the seal of the will of the heavenly way on the gate of the celestial realm was broken, the cultivators of the seventh realm would be able to march straight into the hinterland of the seventh realm. Upon hearing Luo Li's words, many experts from the seventh realm nodded in agreement. Although they were usually very casual with Luo Li, they would carry out Luo Li's orders immediately. As they began to break the seal on the gate of the celestial realm, the will of the heavenly way, who was in the seventh wilderness, was naturally aware of this. At the beginning, the will of the heavenly way already knew that once the gate of the celestial realm was formed, it couldn't be destroyed. The seal he had cast was just to buy some time. At this time, outside the gate of the seventh continent, the will of the heavenly way and more than 10 experts from the seventh wilderness were standing in the air. These people were unfamiliar to the people of the seventh wilderness. They were also the strongest cultivators in the seventh wilderness apart from the will of the heavenly way. Their strength was above that of the wine Taoist and the others. At this time, these people's arrival on the seventh continent didn't attract anyone's attention. They came to the gate of the celestial realm with the will of the heavenly way. Looking at the seal on the gate of the celestial realm, everyone's expression was solemn. After a moment of silence, one of them spoke first. "Will of the heavenly way, the seal won't last for long." Now, the experts of the seventh realm had begun to break the seal. As a result, the seal wouldn't be able to last for too long. Hearing this, the will of the heavenly way's expression didn't change much. He said in a low voice, "At this speed, it should last for half a year." The seal could only last for half a year, which meant that the seventh wilderness only had half a year left to deal with it. Hearing the words of the will of the heavenly Tao, the expressions of the dozen or so experts from the seventh wilderness beside him became even more solemn. There was no doubt that the battle would be extremely fierce in half a year. At that time, because of the gate of the celestial realm, the flames of war between the seventh realm and the seventh wilderness would be brought to the seventh continent. It might even spread to the entire seventh wilderness. The seventh wilderness and the seventh realm had been at odds with each other for so many years. Finally, because of the gate of the celestial realm, this standoff was about to come to an end. The final decisive moment was about to arrive. The will of the heavenly way didn't say anything else. Things had developed to this point. Even he couldn't stop it. Fortunately, there was still at least half a year to prepare. The will of the heavenly way looked at the gate of the celestial realm and said coldly, "In half a year, let's see who will be the final victor. For the sake of the people of the seventh wilderness, I will protect the seventh wilderness even if I have to use my last breath." As he spoke, a righteous aura shot into the sky from the will of the heavenly ways. When they sensed the righteous aura that erupted from the will of the heavenly ways, over a dozen experts from the seventh wilderness cried out loudly as well. As long as the heavenly way exists, the righteousness will last forever. The will of the heavenly way was the protector of all people. This was deeply ingrained in everyone's hearts. Hearing the shouts of the experts of the seventh wilderness, the will of the heavenly ways' eyes flashed with determination. The seventh wilderness would definitely win this final battle against the seventh realm. The seventh realm started to break the seal. The will of the heavenly way was also making his final preparations. At this moment, at the entrance of the seventh wilderness, in the white palace opposite the black palace of the seventh realm, a drunk Taoist was looking at the black palace in the distance. This Taoist was none other than the wine Taoist. He could be considered Xiao Chen's master. He already knew that Xiao Chen had betrayed the seventh realm. Moreover, a few days ago, the seventh realm had sent news that Xiao Chen was now the heir of the seventh realm. It wasn't a secret that Xiao Chen had become the heir of the seventh realm. The seventh realm didn't intend to hide it, so it wasn't strange that the seventh wilderness knew. A sliver of mixed emotions flashed through Taoist Wine's eyes as he stared at the black palace in the seventh world from afar. When he first heard that Xiao Chen had killed his father and wife and betrayed the seventh realm, the wine Taoist's first reaction was disbelief. After living with Xiao Chen for 5 years, the wine Taoist knew Xiao Chen's personality very well. How could Xiao Chen kill his father and wife? But on the other hand, the will of the heavenly way had said himself. The wine Taoist didn't dare to doubt the will of the heavenly way at all. Thus, the wine Taoist had always been very conflicted about this matter. Please add, vote, recommend. Chapter 1586. The wine Taoist was very conflicted about Xiao Chen. Of course, the will of the heavenly way hadn't tampered with his memories because there was no need for that. As an immortal venerable, the wine Taoist's trust in the will of the heavenly way was almost ingrained in his bones. Although he didn't want to believe that Xiao Chen would really kill his father and wife, since the will of the heavenly way said that Xiao Chen had defected, the wine Taoist instinctively chose to believe it. After so many years, the image of the will of the heavenly way had been deeply ingrained in the hearts of the wine Taoist and the others. It could be said that in the hearts of the wine Taoist and the others, the will of the heavenly way was right. No matter what the will of the heavenly way said, they only needed to obey. Looking at the black palace in the distance, a trace of anger slowly appeared in the wine Taoist's drowsy eyes. After a long while, the wine Taoist said fiercely, "Xiao Chen, why did you do such a thing? I must ask you face to face today." Having said that, the wine Taoist moved and instantly disappeared from where he was. The wine Taoist was very conflicted about the matter of Xiao Chen. Of course, this didn't mean that the wine Taoist believed that Xiao Chen was wronged, but the wine Taoist didn't understand why Xiao Chen would do such a thing. It could be said that when the will of the heavenly way said that Shao Chun had killed his father and wife and defected to the seventh realm, the Wine Taoist had already believed Shao Chen's words. The reason why he was conflicted was because he couldn't figure out why Shao Chun would do such a thing. Although the Wine Taoist didn't admit that he was Shao Chen's master, the Wine Taoist and Shao Chun had been together for 5 years after all. Moreover, the Wine Taoist did indeed treat Shao Chun as his disciple from the bottom of his heart. The Wine Taoist, who had never taken in a disciple in his life, did not expect that Shao Chun would do such a thing. The Wine Taoist was indeed very aggrieved these days. Therefore, Wine Taoist couldn't hold back any longer. He flew directly to the seventh realm's Black Palace. He wanted to talk to Shao Chun face to face and clean up the mess. The Wine Taoist chose to believe in the will of the heavenly way. This was not his fault. After all, the will of the heavenly way held a very important place in the hearts of all living beings. They flew all the way to the Black Palace in the seventh realm. Wine Taoist was naturally familiar with the Black Palace. After all, the two sides had been at odds for countless years, and they had fought countless battles. With Wine Taoist's speed, it did not take long for him to appear in front of the Black Palace. Standing in the air and looking at the Black Palace in front of him, Wine Taoist took a deep breath and shouted, "Shao Chun, get out of here." With the support of spiritual power, his voice instantly spread throughout the Black Palace in the seventh realm. Soon, several experts from the seventh realm flew up into the sky from the Black Palace. The leader of the group was also an immortal venerable, and he knew Wine Taoist. Seeing that the Wine Taoist had come alone, the expert of the seventh realm smiled faintly. "Old drunkard, what are you talking about?" The two sides had fought for so many years, so it was not strange that they knew each other. Wine Taoist's eyes were cold when he heard what the expert of the seventh realm said. "I don't have time to talk nonsense with you today. Ask Shao Chun to come out. I have something to say to him." The Wine Taoist came here alone for Shao Chun. However, the cultivator from the seventh realm sneered when he heard what the Wine Taoist said. "Old drunkard, I think you're drunk. You can't call the name of the heir apparent so casually. Besides, this is the seventh realm, not the seventh wilderness. You're courting death by coming here alone." With that, a cold light flashed in the eyes of the expert of the seventh realm. Since the Wine Taoist had come here alone, today was a good opportunity to capture him. However, just as the expert of the seventh realm was about to make a move, Shao Chun suddenly appeared and stood opposite the Wine Taoist. Seeing Shao Chun suddenly appear, the experts of the seventh realm were slightly stunned. Although they did not recognize Shao Chun's identity as the heir apparent, they still chose to give face to Shao Chun in front of outsiders. Therefore, they all cupped their hands and greeted him. "Greetings, heir apparent." Although they said that, there was no respect at all. To put it bluntly, they were just putting on an act. However, Shao Chun did not care about the attitude of these people at all. His blood-red eyes were fixed on the Wine Taoist from beginning to end. Shao Chun indeed did not expect the Wine Taoist to come to the Black Palace of the seventh realm alone. After all, this was the territory of the seventh realm. There was no need to say how dangerous it was for the Wine Taoist to come alone. He looked at the Wine Taoist, and a faint glint flashed in his blood-red eyes. Ever since his accident, Shao Chun had not seen his old friends. Now that he met the Wine Taoist, Shao Chun's heart was slightly touched. His heart, which had been like stagnant water, seemed to have been thrown into a small stone, giving up layers of ripples. Shao Chun's heart was in turmoil. At the same time, looking at Shao Chun, the Wine Taoist was also stunned. For a moment, the Wine Taoist could not believe that the person standing in front of him was actually Shao Chun. That head of white hair, that pair of blood-red eyes, how did it become like this? He could not believe it, nor could he accept the change in Shao Chun. It had only been a short time, but Shao Chun's appearance had changed so much. The Wine Taoist found it difficult to accept for a moment. However, the Wine Taoist was only stunned for a moment. Then, a wisp of anger flashed in his eyes. "Shao Chun, let me ask you, why did you do something worse than a beast like killing your father and wife? Why did you betray the seventh realm?" He questioned as soon as he opened his mouth. This fully showed that the wine Taoist had always believed the will of the heavenly way. He believed that the will of the heavenly way would not frame Shao Chun. In the wine Taoist's opinion, the will of the heavenly way could not be wrong. Shao Chun might have his reasons for doing something like this, but the wine Taoist had never doubted the will of the heavenly way. Shao Chun, who had been stirred up by the sight of the wine Taoist, could only laugh bitterly in his heart when he heard the wine Taoist's question. Actually, Shao Chun had already thought about how the will of the heavenly way would deal with this matter. Since they failed to kill him, the will of the heavenly way would definitely push all the blame onto him, saying that he had killed his father and wife. However, with the will of the heavenly way's position in the hearts of all living beings, no one would be willing to believe him. He laughed bitterly in his heart. Even the wine Taoist did not believe him and believed that he had killed his father and wife. What could Shao Chun say? Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1587. Wine Taoist firmly believed that the will of the heavenly way was never wrong and would never frame Shao Chun. In his eyes, the will of the heavenly way was righteous, and his words were unquestionable. Faced with wine Taoist questioning, the trace of joy in Shao Chun's heart from seeing an old friend vanished in an instant. He originally wanted to explain himself, but he swallowed his words back down. Shao Chun let out a self-deprecating laugh and thought to himself, yeah, with the reputation of the will of the heavenly way in everyone's hearts, who in the seventh wilderness will believe me now? Black and white, good and evil, all because of a single statement from the will of the heavenly way. Everything was reversed so easily. It was clearly the will of the heavenly way who slaughtered Shao Chun's family. But now, the truth was that Shao Chun killed his father and wife, betrayed the seventh realm, and became a villain and a bastard in everyone's eyes. Shao Chun didn't want to fuss over this, nor did he want to explain himself. Right now, Shao Chun's only thought was to resurrect his family. Apart from that, he didn't care about anything else. As for what the world thought of him, he didn't care. Whether they thought of him as a demon or a bastard, Shao Chun didn't care. Seeing that Shao Chun remained silent for a long time, wine Taoist yelled again. What's wrong? Have you nothing to say? Shao Chun, how could you do such a thing? You killed your father and wife. You, wine Taoist said angrily after seeing that Shao Chun remained silent for a long time. Upon hearing his words, the expressions of the powerhouses from the seventh realm changed slightly. In fact, the people from the seventh realm already knew about Shao Chun's situation in the seventh wilderness. After all, since wine Taoist knew that Shao Chun had become the heir of the seventh realm, it wasn't surprising that the seventh realm knew about Shao Chun. However, what everyone knew was naturally what the will of the heavenly way said. Shao Chun killed his father and wife and betrayed the seventh realm. All in all, very few people knew the truth. Moreover, Luo Li and the other top powerhouses of the seventh realm were trying their best to break the seal of the immortal domain. As a result, no one stepped forward to explain anything to Shao Chun. Of course, Shao Chun had never defended himself. In Shao Chun's opinion, what was the use of defending? How could his words be more important than the will of the way? Besides, would defending himself of the heavenly king's family? There were many discussions about Shao Chun killing his father and wife in the seventh realm. However, the people from the seventh realm didn't believe in the will of the heavenly way. Therefore, they wouldn't be like wine Taoist, who completely believed in the will of the heavenly way. Coldness flashed through his eyes. The leading powerhouse from the seventh realm shouted in a deep voice, "Wine Taoist, do you want to die?" No matter what, Shao Chun was the heir of the seventh realm. He was the symbol of the seventh realm. How could he be insulted by wine Taoist? However, wine Taoist didn't seem to care about the powerhouse from the seventh realm. He still stared at Shao Chun and sneered. "Oh, what? You're so unscrupulous now that you've become the heir of the seventh realm?" Shao Chun's silence made wine Taoist even more certain that the will of the heavenly way was right. At the same time, he was even angrier. He was angry because he thought highly of Xiao Chun. It could be said that the wine Taoist thought highly of Xiao Chun. It could be said that the wine Taoist already considered Xiao Chun as a successor. However, Xiao Chun had done something like this. How could wine Taoist not be angry? As the saying went, the greater one's expectations, the greater one's disappointment. Wine Taoist's expectations for Xiao Chun had been obvious. It wasn't strange that he was disappointed now. However, wine Taoist still cared about Xiao Chun. Seeing that Xiao Chun still didn't speak, wine Taoist took a deep breath and said, "Xiao Chun, come with me to the 7th realm. Xiao Chun, come back to the 7th barren territory with me and explain to the heavenly law. I believe the heavenly law will not make things difficult for you. The 7th realm is ambitious. How can you help them?" Wine Taoist had two goals for coming here today. One was to vent his anger, and the other was to persuade Xiao Chun to turn back. In Wine Taoist's opinion, Xiao Chun had killed his father and wife. It was a fact that couldn't be changed. However, he shouldn't have joined the 7th realm. If Xiao Chun was willing to turn back and return to the 7th realm, Wine Taoist would be willing to use his life to protect Xiao Chun. He could feel Wine Taoist's concern for him. Unfortunately, he was too loyal, or rather, he trusted the will of the heavenly way too much. He didn't know what was going on at all. If Xiao Chun returned to the 7th realm, would he still be alive? There was no chance of survival at all. Even if the people of the 7th realm pleaded for Xiao Chun, the will of the heavenly way probably wouldn't let Xiao Chun go, let alone Wine Taoist. Xiao Chun knew too much. Xiao Chun could feel Wine Taoist's concern for him. However, could he return to the 7th realm? Impossible. Moreover, Xiao Chun didn't plan on explaining anything. Xiao Chun knew that Wine Taoist would never insist on the will of the heavenly way. Xiao Chun shook his head and said calmly, "I, Xiao Chun, will kill the 7th realm in my life." The 7th realm was what the people of the 7th realm called the will of the heavenly way. When he heard Xiao Chun say that he would kill the will of the heavenly way, Wine Taoist's expression, which had just calmed down, instantly became furious again. He looked at Xiao Chun angrily. After a while, the anger on Wine Taoist's face slowly dissipated. Then he said coldly, "Well, Xiao Chun, I was wrong about you. Today I will cut off all ties with you. From now on, you and I will have nothing to do with each other. When we meet on the battlefield in the future, I will not hold back." As he said that, Wine Taoist turned his palm into a knife and cut off a piece of his robe. Looking at Wine Taoist's actions, Xiao Chun's eyes didn't show any emotion. He had already guessed that this would be the result. The will of the heavenly way status among the people was too high. Wasn't he the same in the past? He didn't say anything. At the same time, Wine Taoist was about to leave after cutting off his robe. However, at this moment, the powerhouse of the 7th realm said coldly, "Old drunkard, are you out of your mind? You can come and go as you please. Do you think this is your backyard?" Wine Taoist came here alone today. Obviously, it was a good opportunity to take him down. However, as soon as the powerhouse of the 7th realm finished speaking, Xiao Chun said indifferently, "Let him go." Xiao Chun had no intention of keeping the Wine Taoist around. Although he no longer had anything to do with the Wine Taoist, there was no point in keeping him around. Furthermore, Xiao Chun really did not want to make a move against the Wine Taoist. Only he could understand the pain in his heart. As for Wine Taoist, perhaps one day he would see the true face of the will of the heavenly way. Please collect, vote, recommend. Chapter 1588. In the face of Wine Taoist's attitude, Xiao Chun didn't want to explain anything because it was all in vain. Xiao Chun knew how important the will of the heavenly way was to the people of the 7th wilderness, so even if he wanted to go, no one would believe him. Xiao Chun had no intention of keeping the Wine Taoist. Seeing this, the Wine Taoist looked at Xiao Chun with anger and a hint of disappointment in his eyes. "Xiao Chun, do you really want to keep making mistakes?" Wine Taoist really hoped that Xiao Chun would realize his mistake and return to the 7th wilderness with him. However, he didn't know anything, so he couldn't understand Xiao Chen's thoughts. Xiao Chen didn't answer Wine Taoist, but the strong cultivator of the seventh realm sneered. Old drunkard, I think you really want to die. With that, the strong cultivator of the seventh realm prepared to attack. In his opinion, Wine Taoist dared to come here alone, so he didn't take the seventh realm seriously at all. However, just as he was about to attack, a blood-red sword light suddenly flashed and rushed toward him. The sudden attack made the strong cultivator's expression change, and he could only defend himself. Needless to say, the sword light came from Xiao Chen. He didn't expect Xiao Chen to attack without saying anything. After blocking Xiao Chen's sword, the strong cultivator looked at Xiao Chen angrily and shouted, Xiao Chen, what is the meaning of this? Xiao Chen was now the heir of the seventh realm, but he attacked him. The strong cultivator was naturally furious, but in the face of his anger, Xiao Chen just said calmly, I said, let him go. There was no explanation. Hearing this, the strong cultivator became even angrier, but he didn't continue to attack. After all, Xiao Chen was now the heir of the seventh realm. No matter how angry he was, he couldn't really attack Xiao Chen. Moreover, Xiao Chen had obtained the power of living beings and formed the heavenly immortal mansion. Although he was only at the immortal realm, his combat strength was not much weaker than a celestial venerable. Even if he was no match for Xiao Chen, he was still able to fight back. Xiao Chen stepped forward to stop him. Then, he took a deep look at the Wine Taoist. Without saying anything, he turned around and left. The Wine Taoist's feelings were rather complicated as he watched Xiao Chen leave. After a moment of silence, he shouted, Xiao Chen, if we meet again on the battlefield, then I won't hold back. Xiao Chen didn't reply, and the Wine Taoist turned around and left. The Wine Taoist's arrival made Xiao Chen give up some of his emotions, but at the same time, he felt more helpless and wronged. The truth of the matter had been completely covered up by the will of the heavenly way. Xiao Chen, who was clearly the victim, had now become an unpardonable bastard. He had killed his father and wife, and had betrayed the seventh realm. She felt wronged in her heart, but who could she complain to? Now, everyone in the seventh wilderness probably thought that he was an unpardonable bastard. Returning to the seventh realm palace alone, Xiao Chen didn't tell anyone about the grievances and anger in his heart. He endured all of it alone and returned to his cave residence. The Wine Taoist came to denounce him, and Xiao Chen felt wronged. On the second day after the Wine Taoist appeared, Luo Li also took the initiative to find Xiao Chen. In Xiao Chen's cave residence, Xiao Chen sat alone in the courtyard drinking wine. His blood-red eyes were filled with sadness and loneliness. Luo Li slowly walked to Xiao Chen's side and sat down opposite Xiao Chen. He said calmly, What? Do you feel wrong? Xiao Chen glanced at Luo Li and said indifferently, What's the matter? Luo Li was the realm lord of the seventh realm, someone who could contend with the will of the heavenly way. He was definitely a top expert in this world, but Xiao Chen was still extremely cold to him. He was used to Xiao Chen's attitude. Or rather, Luo Li could understand Xiao Chen. After all, Luo Li was one of the few people who knew the truth. He knew that the will of the heavenly way had killed Xiao Chen's entire family and knew how much damage Xiao Chen had suffered. Thus, he didn't care about Xiao Chen's attitude. Luo Li still smiled faintly. You're the heir of the seventh realm now. If you have time, you should interact more with others, especially those little guys. After all, you're from the same generation, and you're the heir of the seventh realm. You're their leader. Not interested, Xiao Chen replied without even thinking about it. Seeing Xiao Chen's cold attitude, Luo Li smiled helplessly. He didn't dwell on this issue anymore and said, The gate of the immortal region should be broken in half a year. This time, I've contacted people from the eighth realm to work together and take down the seventh wilderness in one fell swoop. The heir of the eighth realm will arrive first. As the heir of the seventh realm, I want you to receive them. He was already trying his best to break the seal of the gate of the immortal region, in order to take down the seventh wilderness in one fell swoop. Luo Li had contacted the realm lord of the eighth realm to work together with the forces of the two realms. The Hachiba Sankai was divided into 8 realms. Each realm operated independently, and the realm lords had similar statuses. Thus, the 2 realms working together this time could only be said to be cooperation. The realm lord of the 8th realm had already agreed to Luo Li's request and sent the heir of the 8th realm to the 7th realm first. The other party was an heir. As the realm lord, Luo Li naturally couldn't receive them personally. However, Xiao Chun was the heir of the 7th realm. They had similar statuses. It was clearly the most appropriate for Xiao Chun to receive the heir of the 8th realm. With that, Luo Li still looked at Xiao Chun with a faint smile. Seeing that Xiao Chun's expression didn't change at all when he heard that they were going to attack the 7th wilderness, Luo Li knew that Xiao Chun really didn't have any thoughts about the 7th wilderness. Of course, with this huge change, Xiao Chun wouldn't care about the 7th wilderness life. Moreover, Xiao Chun really wanted to kill the will of the Heavenly Way immediately to avenge his family and revive them. The 7th wilderness life had nothing to do with Xiao Chun anymore. Xiao Chun also didn't care about the people of the 7th wilderness. His expression didn't change at all. After hearing Luo Li's words, Xiao Chun thought for a while and nodded slightly. Okay. He agreed to Luo Li's request. Seeing this, Luo Li smiled and nodded. Then he took out 2 technique relaying jade from his storage ring and placed them on the stone table. He smiled and said, "These are 2 celestial techniques. I took a long time to choose. They should be suitable for you. Now that you're in the immortal realm, it doesn't make sense that you don't have any celestial techniques. You can find some time to cultivate them. Please collect, vote, recommend." Chapter 1589. After handing the 2 immortal skills to Xiao Chun, Luo Li didn't stay any longer and quickly got up to leave. After all, breaking the seal of the gate of the immortal area was the most important thing now. Luo Li was under a lot of pressure. But before leaving, Luo Li reminded Xiao Chun again not to forget about the matter of the 8th realm's heir. After watching Luo Li leave, Xiao Chun picked up the 2 jades on the stone table. This was the first time Xiao Chun had come into contact with immortal skills. If it had been before, Xiao Chun would have been wild with joy. But the answer was now. To be honest, Xiao Chun didn't feel much. He used his divine thought to explore the jades. Soon, the contents of the jades were engraved in Xiao Chun's mind. There were indeed 2 immortal skills. One was the 9 Serenities sword technique, and the other was the Heavenly Star Step. Both were immortal skills of quite good quality. Immortal skills were naturally divided into strong and weak in grades. Just like sacred level martial arts, immortal skills were divided into 3 stars according to the difference in power. Among them, 1-star immortal skills were the weakest and 3-star immortal skills were the strongest. The 9 Serenities sword technique and Heavenly Star Step that Luo Li gave Xiao Chun were 2-star immortal skills. They were also the limit that Xiao Chun could cultivate at present. Xiao Chun was only in the immortal realm, so he couldn't cultivate 3-star immortal skills. Therefore, 2-star immortal skills were Xiao Chun's limit. Just as Luo Li said, he had indeed chosen these 2 immortal skills for a long time. They were indeed the most suitable immortal skills for Xiao Chun to cultivate. Just by looking at the cultivation methods of these 2 immortal skills, Xiao Chun could be sure that their power was far beyond sacred level martial arts. In other words, they were on a completely different level. Sacred level martial arts were still within the scope of martial arts, but immortal skills were different. They were beyond martial arts. After briefly reading through the contents of the 2 immortal skills, Xiao Chun began to cultivate them. In the following days, Xiao Chun immersed himself in cultivation every day. His hard work caused the hearts of the maidservants in charge of serving Xiao Chun to tremble. This was no longer cultivation. This was completely self-torture. Xiao Chun had almost no time to rest for 24 hours a day. Xiao Chun was like a machine that did not know fatigue. He was cultivating all the time. Of course, no one knew that the reason Xiao Chun was so desperate to cultivate was because Xiao Chun wanted revenge, and revenge required enough strength. Although Xiao Chun had broken through to the immortal realm, he was still too weak when facing the will of the heavenly way. He was so weak that he didn't even have the strength to fight back. Xiao Chan didn't want to experience that kind of despair and powerlessness a second time. Therefore, Xiao Chan cultivated with all his might, desperately wanting to become stronger. As for the second reason, Xiao Chan could only forget the sorrow in his heart through cultivation. Every time he was free, Xiao Chan would involuntarily think of Qin Shu, the four girls, Xiao Qing, and Bai Riyue. It could be said that Xiao Chan used cultivation to numb himself so that he wouldn't think of them and wouldn't be immersed in the sorrow of the past. Such crazy cultivation made the four girls beside Xiao Chan extremely worried. As the heir of the seventh realm, Xiao Chan naturally had servants who were responsible for serving him. There were four maids, and all of them were good-looking. They could be considered first-class beauties anywhere. Moreover, the four maids were very talented in cultivation. They had all reached the beginning of the Saint Realm. However, the four maids had been assigned to Xiao Chen's side for some time now. It was a pity that Xiao Chan did not pay any attention to them at all. In fact, the exchange between the two of them probably did not exceed 10 sentences. He didn't need the four maids to serve him. Moreover, with Xiao Chen's current cold temperament, the four maids didn't dare to casually approach him. Time passed day by day. Under Xiao Chen's desperate cultivation, the Netherworld Sword Technique and the Heavenly Star Step, the two-star immortal techniques, naturally made great progress. After 3 months, Xiao Chan had already cultivated these two immortal techniques to the beginner realm. The beginner realm couldn't be underestimated. The beginner realm of a 2-star immortal technique was several times more powerful than a top-tier Saint Realm martial arts technique. Moreover, to cultivate two 2-star immortal techniques to the beginner realm in just 3 months was already an extremely heaven-defying speed. It should be known that the difficulty of cultivating an immortal technique was far greater than that of a Saint Realm martial arts technique. Of course, the main reason why he could reach the beginner realm so quickly was because of Xiao Chen's hard work. Thinking about it, in 3 months, there was almost no rest. He had devoted all his attention to cultivation. How could he not improve quickly? Moreover, because he had absorbed the power of living beings, Xiao Chen's talent had increased from the original 99 meters to 100 meters. It could be said that he had maxed out his talent. This difference couldn't be underestimated. The difference between a talent of 99 meters and a talent of 100 meters was definitely not as simple as it seemed on the surface. It was no exaggeration to say that after his talent had increased, Xiao Chen's comprehension ability had at least doubled. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to cultivate two 2-star immortal techniques to the beginner realm in less than 3 months. On this day, Xiao Chan was cultivating the 9 nether sword technique in the cave, as usual. However, at this moment, a maid hurried in and bowed respectfully before Xiao Chan. "Heir, Yu Shujin requests an audience." "Yu Shujin came to see me?" Hearing this, Xiao Chan stopped what he was doing. After a moment of silence, he said indifferently, "Bring her to the front hall and wait for me." Hearing Xiao Chen's words, the maid immediately responded respectfully. Then, she quickly turned and left with a blush on her pretty face. Because of Xiao Chen's cold temperament, the 4 maids around him didn't dare to approach Xiao Chan at all. However, the 4 maids loved Xiao Chan in their hearts. First of all, Xiao Chen's strength was obvious. Moreover, after this incident, Xiao Chen's appearance had changed greatly. Compared to before, he didn't feel as otherworldly as before. However, his snow-white hair and blood-red eyes gave off a demonic feeling. It was as if people couldn't help but fall in love with him. She did not know how to put it, but the current Xiao Chan seemed to be more attractive than before. Of course, Xiao Chan didn't care about this at all. Right now, he only wanted to revive his family. As for other things, Xiao Chan didn't care at all. After stopping his cultivation, Yu Shujin took the initiative to come to see him. Xiao Chan actually guessed why she came. It should be that the heir of the 8th realm was about to arrive. About 3 months had passed. According to Luo Li's estimation, the heir of the 8th realm would arrive in a few days. Since he had promised Luo Li, Shao Chun could only come out and receive the heir of the 8th realm. Please add, vote, recommend. Chapter 1590. Wonderful, no pop-up window, free reading. Yu Shujin came to the hall. Seeing Shao Chun walk over, he cupped his hands and bowed. Greetings, heir. Yu Shujin didn't show any hostility to Shao Chun at all. He wasn't angry that Shao Chun had stolen his heir's position. Yu Shujin was like this. He was very egotistical and always did things according to his own preferences. Just like the first time he met Shao Chun in the Northern Underworld Wonderland. He had the chance to defeat Shao Chun, but Yu Shujin insisted on having a fair fight with Shao Chun. In the end, he lost the best chance and gave the power of all living beings to Shao Chun. This time, Shao Chun replaced him and became the new heir of the 7th realm. If it were anyone else, they would find it hard to accept. At least, they would be angry. However, Yu Shujin acted as if nothing had happened. In Yu Shujin's opinion, he wasn't strong enough. It didn't matter if he gave the heir's position to Shao Chun, so he didn't hate him. Anyway, Yu Shujin often did things that others couldn't understand. She was completely independent and didn't care about what others around her said. Shao Chun didn't have any hostility toward Yu Shujin. Looking at Yu Shujin, Shao Chun said indifferently, "The people from the 8th realm are here." "Yes, they're here." Hearing this, Yu Shujin nodded. Shao Chun didn't care about the heir of the 8th realm, so he didn't pay much attention. In Shao Chun's opinion, he only needed to show his face. As for the other things, he could leave them to Yu Shujin and the others. Shao Chun couldn't accompany the heir of the 8th realm all the time. Shao Chun wasn't in the mood either. Therefore, Shao Chun didn't care about the arrival of the heir of the 8th realm at all. Yu Shujin and the others had been responsible for it. Now that the heirs of the 8th field had arrived, Shao Chun nodded slightly. Let's go. Since they were already here, they might as well meet them. As for the rest, only Yu Shujin and the others could handle it. Yu Shujin was used to Shao Chun's indifferent attitude. Ever since they came to the 7th world, Shao Chun had always been indifferent to everyone. Therefore, she didn't say anything and led Shao Chun to the cave dwelling where the people from the 8th world were. This time, the 7th field and the 8th field had teamed up to attack the 7th wilderness. The heir of the 8th field had just arrived first. He only had 4 young prides from the 8th field with him. There were 5 people in total. Their accommodations had been arranged for them. However, while Yu Shujin and Shao Chun were on their way, a young man in a purple robe was scolding another young man in the cave dwelling where the heir of the 8th field was. The young man in the purple robe was the heir of the 8th field. His name was Yi Shao. The young man being scolded was a young pride from the 7th field. Yi Shao was scolding the young man because of Shao Chun. As an heir of the 8th world, Yi Shao came to the 7th world, but it wasn't an heir of the 7th world who met him. Instead, it was an ordinary prodigy. This made Yi Shao feel like he was being underestimated. What a joke. He came to the 7th field with his status, but the heir of the 7th field actually showed up. Was he looking down on him? Thus, as soon as he entered the cave dwelling, Yi Shao flew into a rage. Not only did he scold the pride, but he even injured more than 10 people from the 7th field who had come to greet him. The heir of the 7th field is so arrogant. He didn't even show up. Instead, he sent small fries like you to embarrass himself. Are you looking down on the 8th field? Yi Shao scolded angrily. Hearing this, the pride from the 7th field's eyes filled with anger. This was normal. It would be strange if he didn't get angry after being scolded like this. Of course, this pride was wronged. After all, he couldn't control Shao Chun's will. Besides, because Shao Chun had just become the heir of the 7th field, no one was willing to accept him. In addition, Shao Chun had a cold personality. Thus, the pride from the 7th field didn't sincerely acknowledge Shao Chun. Thus, no one invited Shao Chun to come out this time. But who would have thought that Yi Shao would be so arrogant? Not only did he beat up more than 10 prides from the 7th field, but he also flew into a rage here because Shao Chun hadn't shown up. He was furious, but in front of Yi Shao, this pride from the 7th field didn't dare talk back. He was only at the initial stage of the quasi-saint realm, while Yi Xiao was already at the immortal realm and had also condensed the celestial immortal mansion. There was a huge difference in their strength, so he naturally didn't dare to be presumptuous in front of Yi Xiao. Suppressing the anger in his heart, he didn't say a word and let Yi Xiao scold him. Seeing this, Yi Xiao was even angrier. Without thinking, he slapped his pride and sent him flying. Not satisfied with the scolding, he directly took action and was sent flying by Yi Xiao's slap. Blood trickled down the corner of this pride's mouth. At the same time, his eyes were filled with anger. However, because he was afraid of Yi Xiao's identity, he still didn't talk back. He silently endured Yi Xiao's scolding. However, at this time, Yi Xiao seemed to be addicted to beating him up. Without stopping, he slapped the pride from the seventh field again and sent him flying again. At the same time, he shouted coldly, "Where's Yu Shujin? Tell her to come out personally, or I'll destroy you." Yi Xiao glared at the pride from the seventh field and said coldly. In Yi Xiao's heart, the heir of the seventh field was Yu Shujin. Of course, he didn't know that the heir of the seventh field had changed long ago. Appointing an heir was an internal matter of the seventh field, so there was naturally no need to inform people from other fields. Thus, Yi Xiao didn't know that the heir of the seventh field was no longer Yu Shujin. The seventh world's prodigy's face reddened when he heard Yi Xiao's words. His mouth was filled with blood as he stared at Yi Xiao coldly. His hatred had reached its peak. It was a naked insult. Moreover, Yi Xiao was the heir of the eighth field and had nothing to do with the seventh field. It would be strange if this pride wasn't angry after being humiliated like this. However, just as the pride from the seventh field was about to speak, a blood-red sword light suddenly shot towards Yi Xiao. The sword came without warning, and Yi Xiao did not hold back at all. Immediately, Yi Xiao felt an extremely dangerous aura envelop him. He did not dare to be careless, and he immediately stretched out both his palms to block the sword. Please add, vote, recommend. Chapter 1591. No one had expected this sudden attack. However, Yi Xiao was an heir of the eighth realm after all. He was naturally capable, so he successfully blocked the blood-red sword light. After successfully blocking the sword light, Yi Xiao immediately looked towards the entrance of the cave residence. He saw Xiao Chun and Yu Shujin walking in slowly. Seeing them, Yi Xiao's first reaction was to say, "Yu Shujin, you're courting death." However, Yi Xiao soon realized that something was wrong. Yu Shujin was actually following Xiao Chun. She was consciously one step behind Xiao Chun. Yi Xiao had thought that it was Yu Shujin who had attacked him. After all, he could feel that she was no weaker than him. In the entire seventh realm, Yu Shujin was probably the only one among the younger generation who could match him. However, it seemed that this wasn't the case. Yu Shujin, who was supposed to be an heir of the seventh realm, was actually following a young man in white. Judging from their positions, it was obvious that the young man in white had a higher status than Yu Shujin. Looking away from Yu Shujin, Yi Xiao looked at Xiao Chun. The first impression that Xiao Chun gave Yi Xiao was that he was evil and then cold. His gaze was indifferent. Facing Yi Xiao's gaze, Xiao Chun didn't show any weakness. His blood-red eyes were indifferent and emotionless. He had never felt such an indifferent aura from someone before. It was as if he wasn't interested in anything in the world. How cold did he have to be able to do this? Confused, Yi Xiao looked away first. He looked at Yu Shujin and asked, "Yu Shujin, aren't you looking down on me too much? You sent these ants to welcome me. Is this enough?" He still thought that Yu Shujin was an heir of the seventh realm. However, hearing his words, Yu Shujin replied indifferently, "Yi Xiao, don't be mistaken. I'm not an heir of the seventh realm now. Senior Xiao Chun is." With that, Yu Shujin looked at Xiao Chun. To be honest, Yu Shujin had also been shocked by Xiao Chun earlier. As soon as they entered the cave, they saw Yi Xiao hit the pride of the seventh realm. Yu Shujin had wanted to scold him, but who would have thought that Xiao Chun would be even more direct? He didn't even think before slashing out with his sword. He didn't show any mercy at all. Yu Shujin could see that Xiao Chun was a man who did not care about anything. As long as he was unhappy, He could stab you with his sword at any time. Moreover, he would do it without any hesitation. She looked at Xiao Chun in shock. At the same time, hearing Yu Shujin's words, Yi Zhao's gaze fell on Xiao Chun again. Yi Xiao and Yu Shujin had met before. Although they weren't very close, they had at least met a few times. But unexpectedly, Yu Shujin was no longer an heir of the seventh realm. Facing Xiao Chun, Yi Xiao wasn't affected at all. The two had never met before. He didn't even know when the seventh realm had changed their heirs. However, after the fight just now, Yi Xiao didn't dare to underestimate Xiao Chun at all. Originally, Yu Shujin, the heir of the seventh realm, was the weakest of the 8 heirs of the Hachibara Senkai. Yi Xiao and the others all looked down on Yu Shujin. Because the seventh realm hadn't been able to obtain the power of all living beings in the seventh wilderness, Yu Shujin couldn't break through to the immortal realm and condense the heavenly immortal mansion. Unable to condense the heavenly immortal mansion and break through to the immortal realm, Yu Shujin was naturally much weaker than Yi Xiao and the other heirs of the other realms. Therefore, Yi Xiao had always looked down on Yu Shujin. But facing Xiao Chun, Yu Shujin didn't look down on him at all. Because after the fight, just now, Yi Xiao clearly felt that Xiao Chun wasn't weaker than him, even though it was only one move. Yu Shujin was also someone who had condensed the heavenly immortal mansion. Xiao Chun was clearly stronger than Yu Shujin. Yi Xiao didn't deny this, but so what? Xiao Chun's sudden attack made Yi Xiao even angrier. Sizing up Xiao Chun, Yi Xiao said coldly, "The new heir of the seventh realm? Huh, is this how you greet an important guest?" Important guest? Hearing this, Xiao Chun ignored him. Instead, he looked at the pride of the seventh realm who'd been injured by him. His eyes were still emotionless. "Did you hit him?" Hearing this, Yi Xiao didn't intend to explain at all. Instead, he shouted coldly, "So what? I don't care about the seventh realm, but you and I are both heirs of the seventh realm. Do you think it's appropriate for these ants to greet me?" To Yi Xiao, these ants were nothing if he'd hit them. Was Xiao Chun going to seek justice for them? Besides, he and Xiao Chun were both heirs of the seventh realm. Their statuses and abilities were similar. Yi Xiao wasn't afraid of Xiao Chun at all. Of course, the most important thing was that the seventh realm and the eighth realm were about to join forces to attack the seventh wilderness. At this juncture, Yi Xiao didn't believe that Xiao Chun would offend him completely over such a small matter. After all, compared to the seventh wilderness, he could pretend that he'd never hit someone. Yi Xiao was very confident that he had to consider the big picture. He didn't restrain himself at all. Besides, it wasn't just Yi Xiao. One of the 4 prides of the eighth realm who'd come with him also said coldly. They didn't respect Yi Zhao's senior brother, so they deserved to be hit. How can these ants take Yi Zhao's sternum? They're not worthy. The 4 prides of the eighth realm were obviously Yi Zhao's most loyal lackeys. With Yi Zhao's support, they naturally weren't afraid of Xiao Chun. They thought that Xiao Chun would choose to keep the peace out of consideration for the big picture. Unfortunately, Yi Xiao thought too much. Perhaps a month ago, Xiao Chun might have thought of keeping the peace. But now, Xiao Chun obviously wouldn't consider the problem like that. His gaze shifted from Yi Xiao to the pride of the eighth realm who'd spoken earlier. Faced with Xiao Chun's gaze, the pride's smug smile quickly disappeared. He couldn't help but feel a little nervous. Being stared at by Xiao Chun, he didn't know why, but he felt like he was being shrouded by death. It had to be said that this pride had a good intuition. After Xiao Chun looked at him, Xiao Chun had already pointed his finger before the others could react. He instantly performed the 9th finger of the 9th heaven sword finger, the Xin Yuan sword finger. A blood-red light instantly shot towards the pride's forehead. Please add, vote, recommend. Chapter 1592. In Yi Zhao's opinion, since the 7th realm and the 8th realm were about to join forces as the heir of the 7th realm, Xiao Chun obviously had to consider the big picture. Besides, Yi Xiao hadn't done anything. He hadn't killed anyone. He had just humiliated the genius of the 7th realm. Could Xiao Chun really do anything to him? He thought it was just a small matter. Besides, Yi Xiao felt very happy to be able to kill Breeze from the seventh realm. Unfortunately, Yi Xiao obviously didn't know Xiao Chen well. Xiao Chen was definitely not someone who cared about the big picture. Now, Xiao Chen had no taboos. The proud son of heaven from the eighth realm, who was standing next to Yi Xiao, had only interjected a few words. Now, Xiao Chen had already pointed out his finger and performed the red cloud sword finger in an instant. The blood-red sword light streaked across the sky and went straight for the proud son of heaven from the eighth realm. After the incident with the will of the heavenly way, Xiao Chen's murderous intent had reached the extreme. Under the influence of such a strong murderous intent, no matter what martial technique Xiao Chen used, the sword edge he displayed was blood-red. Furthermore, the blood-red blade not only gave off a demonic feeling, but the murderous intent it emitted made one's hair stand on end. At this moment, the genius of the eighth realm, who was enveloped by Xiao Chen's Xianyuan sword finger, stood rooted to the ground as if he had been struck dumb. The murderous intent emanating from Xiao Chen had completely frightened the young man. After his cultivation had reached the immortal realm, the power of the Xianyuan sword finger had also increased greatly. It was completely different from before. Because no one present had thought that Xiao Chen would suddenly attack, no one had time to react when they saw the Xianyuan sword finger heading straight for the genius of the eighth realm, including Yi Xiao. Yi Xiao was both shocked and angry. How dare Xiao Chen attack? How dare Xiao Chen attack him directly? Moreover, it was obvious that he didn't hold back at all. It was obvious that he was going to kill him. Was this guy crazy? He wanted to kill just because of a disagreement. The heir of the eighth realm had only mocked him, and Xiao Chen had directly attacked him. Did he not care about the eighth realm at all? Yi Xiao was terrified, but it was obviously too late to stop him. He could only look at Xiao Chen and shout coldly, "How dare you? Stop it!" He wanted Xiao Chen to stop, but in the face of Yi Xiao's angry shout, Xiao Chen didn't seem to hear him at all. He had no intention of stopping at all. Under everyone's gaze, the Xianyuan sword finger directly pierced through the genius head. He was only at the saint fulfillment realm. Such a cultivation level was naturally like an ant in front of Xiao Chen. He could crush him easily. Dead. They didn't expect Xiao Chen to really dare to kill him. Watching the genius body slowly fall to the ground, the other three geniuses of the eighth realm who had come with Yi Xiao all turned pale. They had thought that there wouldn't be any danger at all on this trip to the seventh realm. Who would have thought that they would meet a lunatic who would kill just because of a disagreement? They were scared out of their wits. Compared to the three geniuses of the eighth realm, Yi Xiao was more furious than shocked. He glared at Xiao Chen, gritting his teeth so hard that they were about to shatter, and said viciously, "You, how dare you? He's from the eighth realm. How dare you kill him?" He didn't expect that Xiao Chen would dare to kill someone. However, in the face of Yi Xiao's anger, Xiao Chen only said two words indifferently. "You have a cheap mouth." Upon hearing Xiao Chen's words, Yi Xiao was even more furious. Yu Shujin, who was behind Xiao Chen, was completely dumbfounded. This guy really didn't care about anything. He killed just like that. Xiao Chen didn't care about the other party's identity at all. In front of Yi Xiao, Xiao Chen killed a genius from the eighth realm. The anger in Yi Xiao's eyes seemed to be about to burst out. At that moment, he took a step forward and the terrifying aura of the immortal realm surged into the sky. Xiao Chen killed one of his men in front of him. Yi Xiao felt ashamed. Looking at Xiao Chen, Yi Xiao shouted coldly, well done, heir of the seventh realm. Today, let me, Yi Xiao, see how capable you are. How dare you?" It was obvious that he wanted to make a move. However, before Yi Xiao could finish his sentence, a blood-red sword light had already rushed towards him. Xiao Chen made a move right away. Seeing this, Yi Xiao had no choice but to swallow what he was about to say. After blocking Xiao Chen's sword, Yi Xiao was even angrier. He gritted his teeth and said, if you want to fight, then fight. You talk too much. If you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish." This time, Xiao Chen didn't even give Yi Xiao a chance to speak. He moved his feet and used the heavenly star step. His entire body disappeared from the spot and appeared in front of Yi Xiao in the blink of an eye. Yi Xiao was simply making a move without any hesitation. Yi Xiao, who was originally angry, was also stunned by Xiao Chun at this time. He simply could not figure out how there could be such a person in this world. Not only did he kill someone because of a disagreement, he had only said a few harsh words, and Xiao Chun looked like he was going to fight to the death. From the beginning to the end, Yi Xiao didn't think that today's incident was a big deal. At most, both sides would part on bad terms. He never thought that things would develop to this point. However, Yi Xiao didn't have the chance to think too much because Xiao Chun had already attacked. The dustless sword in his hand slashed out. Speaking of which, after experiencing this huge change, not only did Xiao Chun's appearance change drastically, but so did the dustless sword. Originally, the dustless sword emitted a faint golden light, but now, the dustless sword had become a killing sword. It was blood red all over. The red color was so vivid that it made one's heart palpitate. It was as though the entire sword was condensed from blood. Moreover, the dustless sword also exuded an extremely dense, killing intent. It was a killing sword, a sword that was born for killing. It gave off a completely different feeling from before. The dustless sword used to be noble and domineering, but now it was overflowing with killing intent and was extremely evil. In fact, it wasn't strange for the dustless sword to have such a change. After all, the dustless sword was transformed from the heavenly sword embryo. It was Xiao Chun's natal divine sword. Now that Xiao Chun had undergone such a huge change, the dustless sword would naturally change as well. It would change according to its master's changes. This was the strongest part of a natal divine sword. It could always be the same as its master. Please add it to your collection. Monthly vote. Recommended. Chapter 1593. He did not hesitate at all and did not give Yi Xiao the slightest chance at all. His figure appeared in front of Xiao Chun in an instant, and Xiao Chun immediately stabbed out with his sword. That terrifying, murderous intent gushed out at this moment. Obviously, he did not hold back at all. Faced with Xiao Chun's attack, Yi Xiao naturally would not allow himself to be captured without putting up a fight. He immediately made his move. The storage ring on his hand flashed, and a black short knife appeared in his hand. The knife and sword collided, and the terrifying force instantly caused the surrounding space to collapse. At the same time, the entire cave dwelling was instantly razed to the ground. Those originally beautiful buildings, fake mountains, and so on were all gone in an instant, destroyed in an instant. Xiao Chun and Yi Xiao were both at the immortal stage. The destructive force of their battle was naturally extremely terrifying. After the two of them collided, Yu Shujin and the others immediately distanced themselves from them. What a joke! With Xiao Chun and Yi Xiao's combat strength, it would not be fun if they were caught in the crossfire. After the collision, neither of them gained the upper hand. It could be said that they were evenly matched. However, Xiao Chun did not seem to have any intention of stopping after the collision. He pointed out his finger and used the Xinyuan finger sword again. Seeing Xiao Chun's attack coming at him again, Yi Xiao also became furious. He slapped out with his palm and used the same Saint-class upper-grade martial technique. The two of them collided and canceled each other out again. Xiao Chun and Yi Xiao clashed twice in a row, and both of them were evenly matched in the end. However, Xiao Chun's next attack was completely unexpected to Yi Xiao. He was simply putting his life on the line. Sword domain, the power of law, and the tempered battle body. Xiao Chun could be said to have used all his combat strength. In an instant, he engaged in a fierce battle with Yi Xiao. In the fierce battle, Yi Xiao was extremely angry at the beginning. However, as the battle continued, Yi Xiao's anger gradually subsided and was replaced by a feeling of madness. A lunatic, a complete lunatic. In Yi Xiao's opinion, Xiao Chun was really a lunatic. In the blink of an eye, he had already exchanged hundreds of moves with Xiao Chun. Xiao Chun was obviously putting his life on the line. Moreover, from Xiao Chun's attack, Yi Xiao could clearly feel that Xiao Chun really wanted to kill him. He was not playing around, nor was he bluffing. He really wanted to kill Yi Xiao. But did he have to go to this extent? It was not a big deal. He only beat a few Heaven's Prides from the 7th realm. With Xiao Chun and Yi Xiao's combat strength, they would probably have to pay a high price to win, let alone kill each other. Therefore, from the beginning to the end, Yi Xiao did not have the intention to fight Xiao Chun to the death. As for the previous scolding, it was because Xiao Chun had killed a Heaven's Pride from the 8th realm in front of him. Therefore, if Yi Xiao did not say a word, it would be too embarrassing. It was all for the sake of face. It was also because Yi Xiao did not have the intention to fight Xiao Chun that Yi Xiao gradually fell into a disadvantageous position in the face of Yi Xiao's attacks. There was no other way. Yi Xiao did not want to fight Xiao Chun to the death, because once the two of them fought to the death, no one could say for sure what the final outcome would be. Moreover, there was no reason to fight to the death. Secondly, there was no benefit to it. Naturally, Yi Xiao did not want to fight Xiao Chun to the death. However, even though Yi Xiao was unwilling, Xiao Chun was different. Xiao Chun's attacks came in waves. Moreover, in the face of Yi Xiao's attacks many times, Xiao Chun did not dodge or avoid, which made Yi Xiao extremely depressed. In Yi Xiao's eyes, Xiao Chun was a complete madman. At this moment, Yi Xiao had completely regarded him as a madman. It was clearly a very small matter. If it were anyone else, they would probably not even attack, let alone kill. However, not only did Xiao Chun kill, but he also wanted to fight to the death. This was simply too much. Before coming here, Yi Xiao had never thought that the heir of the 7th realm would be a lunatic. As the saying went, the violent are afraid of the reckless are afraid of the reckless, and the barefoot are not afraid of the wearing of shoes. Xiao Chun looked like he was going to fight to the death, while Yi Xiao clearly did not want to and did not dare to fight to the death with Xiao Chun. As a result, he was naturally suppressed by Xiao Chun. A second ago, it was a beautiful cave abode, but now it was completely destroyed. While fighting fiercely with Xiao Chun, Yi Xiao shouted, "Stop, stop!" Yi Xiao really did not want to continue fighting. This Xiao Chun was simply a lunatic. He would not let go. It was just a small matter. Did he have to go so far? Yi Xiao was arrogant and domineering. However, in front of a lunatic like Xiao Chun, Yi Xiao's arrogance and dominance were completely useless. You can be arrogant and domineering, but don't provoke me. Otherwise, I will fight to the death with you. Hearing Yi Xiao's words, Xiao Chun did not seem to have any intention of stopping. His attacks did not decrease at all. Seeing this, Yi Xiao completely lost his temper. If there was some deep hatred between the two of them, Yi Xiao might really fight to the death with Xiao Chun. However, was there a need to fight to the death over such a small matter? He had no intention of continuing the fight at all. Moreover, the murderous intent radiating from Xiao Chun shocked Yi Xiao. As the heir of the 8th realm, Yi Xiao had seen the other heirs of Hachibara Sunkai before. He had to admit that apart from Yu Shujin, none of the other heirs of Hachibara Sunkai were simple. They were all outstanding talents. However, in all his life, this was the first time Yi Xiao had felt such a strong murderous intent. Even many of the strong people of the older generation might not be as strong as Xiao Chun in terms of murderous intent. It was hard to imagine how Xiao Chun had cultivated such a murderous intent. How many people did he have to kill to cultivate such a terrifying murderous intent? The more he fought, the more aggrieved and helpless he felt. In the end, Yi Xiao's anger, arrogance, and aggressiveness completely dissipated. He said to Xiao Chun helplessly, Fine. I'm afraid of you. Stop. I was wrong today. Let's forget about what happened before. How about that?" Yi Xiao actually took the initiative to admit his mistake. Hearing this, the 3 8th realm geniuses who came with him were stunned. As Yi Xiao's loyal henchmen, they knew Yi Xiao's character very well. Given Yi Xiao's arrogant and domineering personality, it was simply impossible for him to admit his mistake. But now, Nightingale actually admitted her mistake to someone of the same generation as her, as if they had witnessed a miracle, The three Eighth Realm geniuses stared at Yi Xiao in disbelief. Yi Xiao was also very depressed. What the F***CK was going on? Please add, vote, recommend. Chapter 1594. Yi Xiao bowed his head and admitted his mistake. His tone was full of helplessness. Upon hearing this, Xiao Chun did not continue attacking. He stopped attacking and looked at Yi Xiao indifferently. Faced with Xiao Chen's gaze, Yi Xiao smiled bitterly and said, I admit my mistake. I admit my mistake, okay? It's just a small matter. Do you have to risk your life? Yi Xiao really did not want to continue fighting with Xiao Chun. This guy was crazy. Yi Xiao voluntarily lowered his head. Seeing this, Xiao Chun did not waste any more time. With a thought, he put away the dustless sword and said flatly, If you attack anyone from the seventh wilderness again, I will not hold back. With that, Xiao Chen turned and left without waiting for Yi Xiao's reply. Looking at Xiao Chen's back, Yi Xiao looked even more helpless. Besides Yi Xiao, Yu Shu Jin and the prodigy from the seventh realm also looked at Xiao Chen differently, especially the prodigy who had been injured by Yi Xiao. His impression of the snack city had improved a lot. After all, as the heir of the seventh realm, Xiao Chun had fought for the prodigies from the seventh realm and beaten Yi Xiao to admit his mistake. This had touched everyone's hearts. At first, they did not approve of Xiao Chun. However, after this incident, their impression of Xiao Chun had improved a lot. However, Xiao Chun clearly did not care about their thoughts at all. After killing a prodigy from the eighth realm and fighting Yi Xiao, Xiao Chun left immediately. As for what happened next, naturally, Yu Shu Jin could handle it. This cave abode was completely ruined. Not only were the surrounding buildings completely destroyed, but even the space had become extremely unstable. He looked at Yu Shu Jin. Faced with Yi Xiao's gaze, Yu Shu Jin naturally did not dare to be negligent. She immediately said, Senior Yi Xiao, I will arrange for another cave abode. Xiao Chun could ignore Yi Xiao and even beat Yi Xiao until he admitted his mistake. However, Yu Shu Jin could not. With her strength, she could not compete with Yi Xiao at all. Therefore, now that Xiao Chun had left, Yu Shu Jin naturally did not dare to neglect Yi Xiao. Hearing Yu Shu Jin's words, Yi Xiao impatiently waved his hand and said, Then hurry up? What bad luck! Yi Xiao was helpless against Xiao Chun, but he really did not care about Yu Shu Jin. It was obviously impossible for Yi Xiao to hold a grudge against Xiao Chun because of this. However, Yi Xiao did not expect Xiao Chun to be so crazy. After this encounter, Yi Xiao also understood that the heir of the seventh realm was purely crazy. If it was not necessary, it was best not to provoke him. The job of receiving Yi Xiao completely fell to Yu Shu Jin. As for Xiao Chun, after the battle with Yi Xiao, he did not appear again. They settled down in the seventh realm. On this day, Yi Xiao was drinking, and Yu Shu Jin was accompanying him. Rumor had it that Red Lotus had killed her husband, Hong Xiu's biological father. Therefore, this woman was like a poisonous rose. Although she looked extremely alluring, she was actually extremely dangerous. Therefore, hearing Hong Lian's words, Luo Li smiled and shook his head without thinking. You must be joking. I don't dare to have any thoughts about you. Hearing Luo Li's words, Hong Lian covered her mouth and giggled. Her every frown and smile was indeed indescribably beautiful. At least, many experts from the seventh field were dazed by her. Facing Hong Lian, apart from those who were familiar with her, there were only two people who could remain calm and unaffected. One was Luo Li, and the other was Xiao Chun. Standing in front of the crowd, they only glanced at Hong Lian for a moment before withdrawing their eyes and no longer paying attention to her. For Xiao Chun, Although Hong Lian was indeed fatally attractive to men, Xiao Chun did not dare to be interested in her at all. Therefore, he naturally treated her coldly. However, apart from Xiao Chun, the Seventh Field's geniuses beside him, including Yushu Jin, were all stunned when they saw Hong Lian covering her mouth and giggling. There was a trace of infatuation on their faces. Seeing that Xiao Chun was not tempted by her realm lord, Yi Xiao looked at Xiao Chun curiously. This was the first time Yi Xiao had seen someone treat Hong Lian so coldly. Xiao Chen's indifference made Yi Xiao curious. At the same time, it also attracted Hong Lian and Hong Xiu's attention. Hong Lian just glanced at Xiao Chun calmly, but Hong Xiu kept staring at Xiao Chun curiously, as if she wanted to see through him. After a burst of laughter, Hong Lian, Luo Li, Xiao Chun, Yi Xiao, Hong Xiu, and dozens of experts from the two realms entered the hall together. As for the others, they were arranged to rest. In the hall, the real experts of the two realms sat opposite Luo Li. Hong Lian said with a chuckle, "The 8th wilderness has now arrived at the 7th wilderness. Therefore, this battle will not go smoothly." The 8th wilderness mentioned by Hong Lian was naturally the 8th wilderness's will of the heavenly way. Sensing that Hong Lian was leading people to the 7th wilderness, the 8th wilderness also led its experts to the 7th wilderness. Clearly, they wanted to work together to resist the attack of the two realms. Hearing Hong Lian's words, Luo Li smiled indifferently. "It doesn't matter. Let them come. There will be a battle sooner or later anyway." He did not care about the 8th wilderness's actions. Now that the seal of the gate of the immortal region was about to open, the experts of the two realms could directly enter the core of the 7th wilderness. Seeing that Luo Li did not care about the 8th wilderness, Hong Lian smiled and looked at Xiao Chun. This was the first time she had met Xiao Chun, but she could sense Xiao Chen's cultivation.